You ready to do this, Stu?
I am ready. Budget for the Horde!
Welcome, super friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot is Stu Jones.
Yep, just me, not Garage.
We're two nerds that just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 89, the year the wall fell down. We release every Thursday morning. You can find us on our website, fortofnerd.com. We have links to iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, and everywhere podcasts are available. Stop by and relax a while. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and get us automatically each and every week in your ear holes. Stu, what is going on, my man?
Well, today I learned we actually didn't tear down the wall. We're just looking to move it.
Did I say we moved the wall, or did I say we tore down the wall?
Tore it down, but we're trying to build a wall, remember? That's the new agenda. Let's build walls everywhere.
No, I like to remember in 1989, Reagan's like, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And we tore a freaking wall down.
Yeah, and nowadays it's like, we need to build a wall, and we're going to make it pay for it.
Yeah. Did I tell you I'm starting a ladder company? Just saying.
Not a lot of money in it, but a lot of goodwill.
That's right. So it's been another week in the Fortress of Nerditude. Things have been happening, things have been going on, and I'm excited to talk about some of it, but I want to hear from you. What is going on? What is new with you?
Well, I'm trying not to lose my voice, so I should use it as much as possible to keep it nice and lubricated with saliva.
Yeah.
I spent a week, almost a full week in Portland, doing the thing that I do in Portland.
How is the City of Roses this time of year?
Its air quality is worse than ours right now, believe it or not. And we've
Even
got
with
it
all
bad
the smoke?
right now. Yeah, they've got their own fires.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's like, no matter where you go, is there a fire? Yes, there is. You're not going to be able to breathe. I mean, like, it was much worse than here. Like, Google was sending alerts for air quality and all kinds of stuff. You go outside, couldn't breathe. It was horrible. Let's see, what else? Well, I've whittled down my current dating pool to 0. So that's good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is this information you'd like to share with us?
There's nothing to share. There's just nothing.
Just kind of fell apart, huh?
Yeah, all of it fell apart. Oh, well. But on the upswing, I'm really, really, really excited. I think my ex and I have worked things out. And as of 2 weeks from now, right before school starts, Morgana will be living with me full time.
Yay!
Yay! So that is huge.
The crowd goes wild. That is awesome.
Doubles the number of full-time nerds in this house.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that and getting everything ready. And I did a lot of yard work and a lot of responsible adulting this weekend.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, because you texted me if I knew a yard guy, and of course I don't. I don't, because I'm the chump that does it in my yard.
Hey, how much do you charge?
Dude, I do not do a good job, I promise.
At this point.
Did you find someone? Are you still looking? What are you doing?
No, I'm still looking. I started on it, and it's just, there's so much. My yard is so out of control. I'm not going to talk smack about anyone, but when I bought the house, there was an agreement that somebody would have the outside of the house as their responsibility. And so anyway, now that's my sole responsibility, and it's so freaking much. And I've got a dying apple tree, and
that's too bad.
Yeah, it's wheezing and coughing out there. It's bad.
I got 2 apple trees, and this year one of them's doing good, and one of them's just barely producing anything.
Oh, this is like the branches are just sagging all the way down to the ground, and it's an old tree now. It's like shrinking like an old person would.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. You say you got problems. Is it mostly like lawn, like grass, and like that kind of stuff? Or?
Yeah, just a whole bunch of weeds, and I've got a whole bunch of... there's a lot of foliage of various interesting types around my yard. There's even like a fountain in my front yard. All that stuff just grows in weird kind of different ways. I have no idea how to take care of any of that crap. Yeah.
Here's my recommendation. Something
Burn it
you should
all.
consider.
Burn it all.
That's not far off from what I was gonna say. I've been fighting and struggling with my yard since we moved in about 4.5 years ago, because it was a home that ended up becoming a rental for a long time, and it just, no one takes care of the backyard. So we've got crabgrass back there, and we got all this like dead spots where there's like, it looks like there's grass, but it's really just like dried up lawn clippings that are still kind of covering a little bit of dirt. And in about another month, when the temperature starts dropping, I'm going to till up a whole bunch of the backyard. I'm going to go get a whole bunch of topsoil from J&J Nursery, and I'm going to drop it all over the entire backyard, and then I'm going to seed everything. I'm going to overseed the places that have grass, and I'm going to water like crazy. And if that crap will not grow, then come next spring, I am literally going to use Roundup, and I'm going to kill my entire freaking lawn. I'm going to kill the thing. And then I'm going to lay down brand new sod, because I'm so sick and tired. I want a nice, lush, yard that my kids can run around in bare feet. And right now it's like, you go out there, you're going to twist an ankle, or you're going to step on a thistle, or I don't know. It's just, ugh.
I want AstroTurf.
Yeah, AstroTurf really hurts when you fall on it, though.
That's okay.
Yeah, just saying, it's something to consider. If you can't get it
I'm the
under
only one that
control-
would probably fall down. Morgana's just fine. I'm the one that just walk outside. Oh, it's outside the sun. Poof.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just to the point where I find, like, how much energy and time and money do I want to put into it trying to rehab it versus just like, let's just start over.
See, I want a zero-scape. I'd like go full boulders outside in my yard. If I could.
I lived in Arizona for a few years, and I'm not a big fan of that.
Oh, all those awesome fake lava rocks and
Yeah.
oh, that's so horrible. I'd still prefer that over this crap.
So you're doing yard work. You're trying to figure out what to do.
Not just yard
okay.
work, but all kinds of real, like, forcing myself to go take care of things after I've played the first game of the day. I'd say before I played anything, but
yeah,
that doesn't
come on.
happen.
We know the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. Went and got my motorcycle. Went riding around quite a bit.
Nice.
Which was, when I got the motorcycle, I shortly got the vet afterwards, and so I hadn't ridden the motorcycle much at that point. But now that I've had the vet for a while, love it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But being on the bike is definitely a very different thing, and it's refreshing, and it's just open, and I love it.
Oh, yeah. I know that feeling.
And it's so quiet. I mean, you know how that is, too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. The open road, the wind on your scalp. It's a beautiful thing.
Yep. But, so yeah, that's my week. I even went and bought, like, Swiffer pads, and I don't even know who I am anymore.
You got all domestic this week.
I did.
Lawn work.
Maybe that's why I don't
Swiffer
have any
pads.
dates. I can't. I'm busy cleaning.
But you have a clean house. So, I mean, eventually when you bring a date over, she'll be impressed.
Oh, and I finished putting my bed together.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's my mundane domestic life.
How many Lego pieces was that? No? Wasn't a Lego bed? Oh, dang.
No, Spencer. How was your week, buddy?
Oh, my week was kind of crazy. I had my mom and her husband staying with us for most of last week. They're moving out here. They bought a house in Syracuse, and they had to come and purchase a mattress and washer and dryer and a fridge. And so they were doing that stuff, and then getting ready for a big yard sale that my brother and I are going to do this upcoming weekend.
Why is everybody selling their yards this time of year? I don't get it.
I don't know, but I'm ready to get rid of mine. Like I said, it's just a mess. So we're preparing for that. That's this upcoming weekend. It's going to be nuts because my wife, Brita, leaves this weekend to go to Montana, and she's going to go to a wedding reception. She's going to be gone for 3.5 days. So it's going to be Daddy and the boys, plus a yard sale to do, plus their grandpa Roger, my mom's husband's coming back into town to drop off a bunch of stuff, and so then I got to get him back to the airport. It's going to be a crazy weekend coming up, but it's what it is, and you got to do what you got to do for family, so you make do. Now, I do have an announcement, something I did work on that I had a lot of excitement and a lot of joy this week. I actually had kind of a rough week, just a real busy week, but this was a lot of fun.
Okay, conflicting messages, man. I don't get it.
I got a lot of joy this week out of spending time looking at Dungeons and Dragons stuff and trying to get our schedule for this upcoming Dungeons and Dragons campaign we're going to run. And I've heard back from a few people. I'm waiting to hear back from one other person before I think we can finalize the number of players. And I spent a bunch of time on the Roll20 website trying to figure that out. And I'm just super geeking out over getting going on Dungeons and Dragons right now.
Yeah, you actually shared the news with me. I figured I would go find my player's handbook. I would start making my character that I knew about. And the funny thing is, I actually made that character months ago, thinking that I might get into a D&D group, and I wanted to have a character ready. And really? I don't even remember doing that, except I've got this line-ruled piece of paper that's got all my stats. I'm kind of going through the character creation process. I kind of re-baselining it to make sure I didn't skip anything, but yeah. So I'm actually already ready to go. Nice.
Well, I'm getting closer, and just trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do the logistics of it to make it work. If we're going to stream it on Twitch, we've talked about taking the audio and chopping it up and making a podcast people could listen to. So I'm just trying to look at a lot of the technical side of things, and it's just going to be fun. I mean, I'm not a professional. I've never played. I mean, I've played once, and I'm going to DM it, so it's going to be just a goofy, fun time, and I hope to have a good time just in general with everyone. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm stoked, brother. Let's do it. Let's do it right now.
I'm real excited.
I got my dice. I'm ready to go.
The other thing I did today, I did something today that I haven't done in probably a good 16, 17 years.
Can we talk about that on the podcast?
Yes, of course. I jogged for the first time today.
Oh, no, we shouldn't talk about that ever.
So I got this app, the Couch to 5K app. You may have heard of
it. Yep.
You basically walk a little bit, and then you jog a little bit. Then you walk a little bit and jog a little bit. And you do that for 8 iterations, and then you kind of have a cool-down walk. And I was on day 1, week 1, and I have to basically jog for 60 seconds and then walk for 90. And I found that I jogged for about 54 seconds each time. And then I don't have an idea because I'm not looking at my phone. I was listening to an audiobook. But it was right about that point where I was like, okay, I can't breathe. And I'm going to walk because it's day 1 and I'm okay not being perfect. I'll build into this, and the ideas grow. And then I looked, I'm like, dang it, I was only 6 seconds. I could have held that for 6 seconds longer. But I did that consistently. Every round today. And so I did it. It wasn't fun necessarily, but I'm going to keep at it because I'm to a point now where I can walk for an hour, and I don't, it's not winding me. I'm not feeling much, but I mean, it's still good, and I'm, burning calories, but I want to start stepping up the physical game as far as getting active and healthy.
So, question for you.
Yeah.
What's your shoe situation like? Did you get new shoes to run in, or you're just...
Not yet, and I need them badly, because these shoes
I would not even start that until you've got good shoes, because take it from a guy who had stress fractures through the last year of his service time in the Army, shoes make the difference 100%, and it's not just about comfort, it's about keeping your legs from getting all that shock, especially if it's the first time you ran in a while, brother.
Right. I think I'm actually going to go buy some shoes tomorrow night after work.
Well, tell you what, let's pause the podcast. You can run to Walmart.
Go do it right now?
Yeah.
Is Walmart really the good place to get running shoes?
I don't know. Depends on if you want to spend, less than $3,000 on shoes.
The Fortress of Nerditude is sponsored by Target.
Okay, well, yeah, fair point.
No, so yeah, it's one of those things where I looked at my shoes, and because I've been walking in these same shoes for the last 7 months every day, they're pretty beat up. They're pretty worn down, and I'm getting actually this really weird callus on the tip of one of my toes because of where it rubs against my foot. So I was like, yeah, maybe it's time to get some new shoes.
You need to get shoes just for running, though.
That is right. I'm going to get a new pair. Yes, I'm going to get a new pair for walking and for daily usage, and then I'm going to get a pair just for running.
I mean, as a professional lifelong couch potato, my advice is completely sound.
I like that you qualify that as a professional couch potato.
That's what I do. No, but I mean, like, I do have the running extremely insane and unreasonable amounts every other day in the army thing, and shoes are where it's at.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get some new shoes, I think, and make it a little easier. But it's not a fun thing. It's not something I want to do necessarily. But I see the health benefits. I made it. I made it through day one, and if I can do day one, that means I can do day two, which is you're supposed to do like every other day.
Right.
So I can do day two, and I can do day three. It's only a 3-day-a-week program. So if I made it through day one, that's the hardest one. Every day is going to get easier or slightly easier. At least that's what I'm telling myself. Do not burst my bubble.
Well, no, actually, so while I was going in my university days, it was one of my neuroscience classes for the mental health counseling, not for game and simulation design. That has nothing to do with neuroscience.
Right.
But I don't even remember who it was, but I do remember we were watching this video on the power of addiction and health benefits. Oddly enough, this didn't come up a couple episodes ago. But there's a guy that was literally trying to commit suicide by running himself to death. He had heart problems. Really? He thought he was going to, if he just kept pushing himself, he'd just keel over and die. Problem was he didn't. And then he ran this, 3-4 miles and just kind of gave up on the idea. But then realized that, hey, he did that. And so he made it like a daily regimen to keep running and keep pushing himself. And it was like just from sheer willpower and wanting to die from this, he ended up in like 4 months. He was running full marathons and all kinds of crap. So,
wow.
Yeah, I figure I will never be that bad off. I could probably start running and be okay. But I need to buy a treadmill first so I don't, have to deal with outside.
Yeah, I've done most of my walking...
Especially in this air quality. Ugh.
Right. I have done most of my walking on the treadmill, but lately I've actually started going outside more. I don't know what it was. I think it was when my sister-in-law was here or my mom was here one of the times here recently, and they're downstairs, and so I didn't have full access. I was like, well, I'll just go outside and go for a walk outside. And
had nothing to do with the new Pokemon raids, right?
That's the funny thing. I was walking the other day and I saw all these people. I'm like, they must be playing Pokemon. Like, I immediately thought that. And there was like 8 or 9 people all like around this one tree over by Fox Hollow Park. And I was like, yeah, must be some Pokemon Go thing.
Yeah, they started doing these weird, like almost 2 or 3 times a week, they're doing these weird community events. And I only know this because when I went up to Oregon on vacation, my older daughter plays. And so I was like, oh, what the heck? I'll start it up. And there were some new things. I was like, oh, hey, that's fine. And then I stopped playing it a couple days after because it's Pokemon Go.
Right.
But it's still installed. So I get all these weird community notifications. And the game is still alive and well. And yeah, I see people out playing all the time. It's weird.
Well, you got to catch them all, Stu. You got to catch them all.
How can you ever catch them all? They keep putting out new Pokemon. You can never
smart. I see what they did there.
Crafty buggers.
Anyway, that's all I got for this week, man. I'm a jogging fool now, and I'm just doing other stuff.
Sweet.
Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry.
Dungeons and Dragons. Let's kill Bothans?
Yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Yay!
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
All right, Stu, we're into Rebel Intelligence. What do you have for me this week?
What do I have for you? Well, relevant to my interests, I guess. Necessity, desperation, I'm not sure which. Anyway, dating stuff. I've been living the virtual dating life, and actually, I had forgotten to mention it before, but I will now. I'm actually kind of live streaming or live podcasting my Match.com boost. I've got a boost that I started right before the show started, just seeing if there was anything that would come up that was interesting while recording.
Really?
Nothing is really going on there. Anyway, so I don't know if you know anything about the dating apps, and if you do, I'm actually more apologetic than anything else. But basically, everyone knows about Tinder.
Sure.
Match.com is fairly notorious. and known.
It's been around for a while. Yeah.
And it's the worst of them, trust me. Facebook actually has kind of a partnership with this dating app called Zoosk, which is maybe
Zoosk, right?
That's them.
I think I've seen an ad for it a place or two.
It's basically dating gamified. It's got all kinds of weird, different little things that encourage you to randomly click on strangers that you never actually want to ever meet. But it kind of struck me as odd that Facebook itself, with all this data and all these people that are interacting, why Facebook hadn't jumped into the game yet. Well, wonder no longer. Facebook apparently has, as of like about a month ago, it started internally testing a dating app for Facebook.
Really?
They call it dog fooding. So they're dog fooding this program for the dating app on Facebook. It's the Facebook employees that are doing it, but it's with fake data for their dating profiles.
Sure.
They plan to delete all the data before the public launch. I would not be surprised if some of the lonely guys or gals that work at Facebook are actually, trying to manipulate this to actually get dates. But anyway, they're definitely jumping
Mommy,
into that business.
Daddy, how did you guys meet? I was a dog food date, son.
Which is only slightly better than saying I met your mom on Facebook
or Tinder.
Well, yeah. So the funny thing is this actually gets around that social stigma. I met your mom on Tinder is pretty horrible to say, but saying you met somebody on Facebook, that actually happens a lot. So now you're just kind of masking that it was on the Facebook desperation.com site. So
see, I always felt that Facebook lent itself to like dating anyway, because back in the day, this was back when actually people posted a lot, and like when I was single and you'd see a lot of single people on there before all the corporations and the grandparents got on there. I would go on there and I would meet a cute girl, and I would like go and like what's now we call Facebook stalking, right? I go look at her, go see what she's doing, what kind of pictures she's posting. But then like if she had a bunch of cute friends in her photos, I'd look at some of their photos too, and they're like, maybe I want to ask her friend out instead. I mean,
I have never done that and actually reached out to some friends.
Liar! Anyway.
Well, okay, maybe I have, and maybe I'm going to the upcoming Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson show with somebody like that. But anyway,
just saying.
But
like, I feel like that's maybe it still is a thing. Maybe people still do that, but I feel like I turn on Facebook now and it's all like political garbage or ads or like videos that people are reposting, and it's occasionally like real content.
So if you're ever really that bored, then I recommend that you actually scroll through your Facebook feed and count how many posts there are that do not include pictures as opposed to those that do. And it's crazy how much it's all visual now. Yeah. Everyone's posting something. I catch myself doing it.
It's the Instagram effect.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Facebook dating app. Well, you'll have to let us know how that goes.
Oh, what are you implying there?
I'm implying that you're going to do one of those dog food dates. That's what I'm saying.
It's for science, brother. It's for science.
Right. We're not implying that she's a dog, whoever you're dating. I'm just saying that's the name because that's what the Facebook people call it. Right? We got that? We're good? Yep. Okay, good.
Burn this episode after we record it.
That's right. Your mission, should you choose to accept it. So I've got some really good news, some really exciting news. I saw this. I think you saw this. I think the world saw this. But if you
I already know what you're talking about.
If you miss this.
It's a glass preview.
No. I was like, no, I got nothing to that. Yeah.
Trailer preview.
I'm a huge Star Trek fan, as I know Stu, you are as well. And this little nugget, we talked about this a while ago because there was a rumor, but Sir Patrick Stewart has officially confirmed that he is coming back to a Star Trek series, not as a guest, no, as a regular for a new Star Trek series.
Yeah.
That is so freaking awesome.
Well, and it's even, he's the subject.
Right. It's going to focus on him. It's going to take place 20 years after the movie Star Trek Nemesis. and it's going to be focusing on like kind of what he's doing. So I don't know if this is we don't know a lot about it. We don't know if this is
Star Trek gardening.
right. Yeah, exactly. We don't know if he's going to be that. We don't know if he's going to be like, teaching at the academy, or if he's going to be, like, I don't know, like some ambassador, or, I don't know, an admiral maybe.
Well,
in Starfleet.
That's the formula. He's going to be an admiral, and then he's going to get sucked into, he's going to be on board the Enterprise, and they're going to get sucked into some major dilemma thing, and suddenly he's out in space again.
And he's got to take over. Sounds like movie I've seen.
Star Trek 2, 4, 5.
First Contact, and no, Generations. Yeah.
The reboot.
Yeah. But basically, and this is going to return to CBS All Access. So this is now going to make the third Star Trek show CBS All Access has. They've got Star Trek Discovery.
Yep.
They're coming up with something called the Star Trek Short Treks.
Yeah.
That's in the works. And then they're going to come up with this new Captain Picard After Next Generation series.
Yeah. They did it just to spite me.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of paying for the All Access, but man, that Discovery was fantastic. And now it's like more Star Trek with Jean-Luc.
Yeah.
Oh man, that is one of those things where it's like, okay, they may have found the silver bullet to make me pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, the gist of it was basically, what the heck are you doing, CBS All Access, trying to hinge this whole thing on a single Star Trek show, because let's face it, that was the only content on that channel worth watching.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, you're absolutely right. They heard the wrong part of that, though. They heard only one Star Trek show. So now they're fixing that problem.
Yeah, so we're about to be, hit with a deluge of Star Trek, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If the season 2 Discovery is as good as the first season or better, great. If the Star Trek Star Shorts are good, that's great. If they can frickin' do a Picard series that's going to carry on with one of the most beloved captains of all time, halla frickin' Luya, let's make this thing and let's make it happen.
And let's just talk a moment about the Short Treks thing, that being kind of an anthology of things. That's a pass for them. They don't even have to make all of them work. It's like, oh, well, the third or fourth one sucked, but the other ones, because they all stand alone, so as long as they're above average as a means across them all, that's still going to work. It's way too freaking smart. They're not getting my money.
I look at it like this. You remember when Battlestar Galactica rebooted?
I do.
They did the first 2-parter, which was basically kind of like a mini series, and then you had the first episode, which was really like episode 2 or 3, like if you used it.
Yep.
If they do the shorts kind of like that, where it's kind of like a big episode, or a big, almost kind of like a little mini series where they
no, they're all going to be self-contained stories.
Right, but I mean, but not something that they would go on, but like it's a self-contained story, but it's like an hour and a half, 45 minutes, so almost the length of a feature film, but maybe a little shorter, and it's high quality like they're doing on Discovery. Like, I think that those could do really, really well, because they could tell a whole story, but not make it feel like, hey, this was 45 minutes. Because who wants, like just a little thing? You're going to want a bigger chunk, a bigger bite. And then, of course, if any of those become really popular or get really good traction, they always have the opportunity to take that and spin it into a series.
Yeah, maybe.
You never know.
I do know. I know everything.
Well then, how good is this show going to be, Stu?
Which one? The Jean-Luc Picard one?
Yes.
It's going to be the most amazing thing ever to hit television up until Lord of the Rings is on, and then it's going to go back and forth.
Wow. Bold prediction, Cotton. Bold prediction.
We have never been wrong before. We actually start things here on the show.
That is true.
So, just saying. All right.
All right, what do you got for me?
Well, speaking of Star Trek, Uber has been working on basically re-engineering transportation as their go-to site for all things transport. So, excuse me, here's where my voice is going to start going out. Anyway, we were promised flying cars. Uber is looking to make that a reality as soon as 2020, which to me is like crazy.
A year and a half from now?
Right.
Come on.
I mean, we hear about things, we're thinking like 10, 15, 20 years away in science fiction. But apparently they're already testing these flying taxis that are basically they're helicopter-style rotors, takeoff and landing. But then they have a fixed-wing model, to be able to help glide and use lift for longer distances. I did watch a video of this. I know we've been looking at flying cars, actually, for about the last 4 or 5 years.
How about since the Jetsons? Hello?
I mean, like in a realistic way that people are producing
so am I,
these.
Stu.
Jetsons is a cartoon, Spencer. But no, I mean, like the current model, there seems to be there seems to be one theme. You saw all these flying car manufacturers that are making prototypes. Originally, they all looked very disparate, very different sciences behind how they're going to use lift and transportation, all that. Now they've all kind of started to converge on this one overall design where it's really like I see a lot of the rotor and fixed wing mix. So anyway, Uber's looking at putting this into place. It would be cheaper apparently than regular Ubers. It'd be straight shot. I don't know how that all works out, but cheaper than existing taxes. Sorry.
So here's my question: don't you think Lyft has missed the mark on being the first one to do this?
They really did.
I'm just saying.
They should actually merge the two, and it would become the Uber Lyft.
Ooh, yeah. How about that?
I want my flying cars, brother. I want it now.
I want my flying cars, but I want it in the shape of a DeLorean with a Mr. Fusion on the back.
We already talked about that. Under. That's unreliable. Don't trust it.
I know, but I'm just saying. That's how I want it. So I got something else. So we were going to talk about the CBS All Access, and we're talking about, how all the Star Trek's going streaming. So this is interesting. Star Wars is a massive, intellectual property.
I've heard of it.
We know, it's been around. And we know that Disney has got this upcoming streaming service they want to get kicked off. And they've talked about bringing the Marvel stuff in-house to that and like the Disney movies. Well, apparently Disney's going to have a hard time getting back some of its big Star Wars films. We're talking like the original series, prequels, because what happened is that Disney, a number of years ago, back in I think 2016, they made a deal with Turner Broadcasting. So this is like TBS, TNT, Stars, I think.
Right.
And they made a deal with them that they have the rights to show and to rebroadcast those movies on TV. And Disney basically went to Turner and was like, "Hey, we'd like to get this back." And Turner was like, "No." and basically just kind of rebuffed them and said, that they rejected it, and those talks have kind of stalled out. And this is a really interesting thing because you have companies like DC now, like Warner Brothers, who's going to do the what's called the DC universe, right?
Yep.
So they're going to bring back like their shows like Justice League and Suicide Squad. They're going to try to get classic films like Superman, the motion picture, Batman Begins. So they've got their thing. Disney's doing their thing. And what's going to happen now is that in order for these companies to get bigger and gain a bigger audience, because if they're struggling to get back some of their intellectual property as far as streaming rights, they have to produce content that's only available on their channel, which is one of the reasons why CBS All Access didn't collapse right away, is because it's saying like, hey, we've got stuff that's on CBS, but here's something else you can only see on All Access, which is Star Trek Discovery. And the more they add to that, it keeps people there. I mean, how often do you watch stuff on Netflix, Stu?
Are we talking on a daily basis? How many hours? What?
Just. I mean, would you say? Yeah, would you say you watch it daily?
I watch it almost daily.
Okay, and then my follow-up question is, how much Netflix original content do you watch?
These days,
Yes.
I would say 75%.
Right,
which is surprising to me, but.
So you've got things, right, like Stranger Things on Netflix that they're doing is a big, huge hit. They got stuff like, I think, Altered Carbon, and Hulu's got like The Handmaid's Tale, and we're going to be getting The Lord of the Rings on Amazon Prime, and we're also going to be getting the Dark Tower series on Amazon Prime, the Prime Video. And so we've got these content creators now that are doing their own content that's keeping people there. And so it makes sense for people like Netflix, right? Because Disney wants to get stuff back, the Marvel movies and some of the Star Wars stuff back from Netflix. It's in Netflix's best interest to say no and to hold them off as long as possible, because the longer they do that, they keep themselves as like, hey, we're the only place to get this, and keep subscribers. And it also potentially could hurt Disney and keep them from getting into the market and getting a bigger market share for a longer amount of time.
Right.
So it's this really interesting world we're in right now where these companies are going to have to navigate all this intellectual property from television and other streaming services, and you're not going to be able to go and say, I just want to see every Star Wars movie ever made and go to one service.
Oh, that's too bad. And the funny thing is I remember actually on Starz, I remember way back when actually watching an episode 1 through 6 marathon on Starz, and I guess that's something that we're never going to see on Disney, or at least not anytime soon. And it's funny it's funny you brought up the original content thing, because I remember, I don't remember what it was. I'm sure a quick search would reveal it, whatever it was. But when Netflix first came out with its very first original content, I rebuffed that. I was like, well, yeah, sure, I'll watch that once I'm done watching all this other million things that I've been trying to catch up on. And oddly enough, I mean, they just put it out there and they've been delivering some quality crap. It's weird. I never expected that I would be watching primarily Netflix original content, but there you go.
So it says that the first original series on Netflix was House of Cards.
Well, was that first original series or first original anything?
First original series.
Well, that might have been it, though. And House of Cards was really good, too. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Netflix first self-commissioned original content series, House of Cards, was released in 2013.
Well, there you go. And they've had my couch on the butt ever since.
They've had your couch on the butt ever since. No, we're going with that.
Yep, that's the truth.
That's how it is.
Okay. Let's.
That may be the name of the episode. They've had my couch on the butt ever since.
The couch on the butt.
The couch on the butt. Okay, so kind of going along with this, the next thing I want to talk about is Disney's doing their own streaming, and we've talked about how we're going to get a live-action Star Wars show.
You're going to do this every episode, aren't you? You're just going to take 2 Rebel Intelligence back to back and just cut me out. That's fine.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's your show. I get it.
So here's the kind of cool thing, right? We know Jon Favreau is doing this live-action Star Wars show, and Disney's tapped Ricky Strauss, a current president of marketing, to kind of manage this whole streaming service, which has been announced it's going to be releasing next year, but we don't know what it's called and whatnot. And so they're going to do a live action show, and that's going to be one of their set pieces to try to build around this service. And it's going to take place 7 years after the climax of Return of the Jedi. So it'll take place between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. And it's only going to be, as far as we know, the first season is going to be 10 episodes. And here's the interesting thing. It's going to be $100 million to produce this thing. So we're talking $10 million an episode, which is going to make it one of the priciest TV shows in the world. Now, of course, you got some Game of Thrones, which is coming up in its last season, which is going to be like $15 million an episode, because apparently, dragons are expensive.
As are actors who've been on a wildly successful series for years.
That's right.
Are you calling them the dragons? Oh, God, the Friends
Well,
Effect.
one of them's the mother of dragons. Yeah.
Khaleesi!
But then again, Stranger Things, in their second season, they had $8 million an episode. Apparently, demigorgons aren't all that cheap either. I guess they're pretty expensive.
It was the special effect to make the die roll a 20.
That's right. They didn't just sit there and roll it over and over and over and over again. But apparently, they're saying with the Star Trek series, it's going to be a lot of CG, space battles, Star Wars. Yeah, so it's going to be just a lot of money. A lot of money.
You said Star Trek.
Did I say Star Trek? Did I say Star Trek?
Star Trek.
I meant Star Wars. Come on, Super Friends. You know what I mean.
I bet nobody gives you a ration for that.
A break. So my next thing that I want to talk about. No, I'm just messing with you. What do you got?
No, it's, you know what? I'm just here to listen to your awesomeness.
The couch on the butt. I got it.
The couch on the butt. So, let me ask you a question.
Riddle me this, Stu. Yes.
If you had a robot,
Yes.
and
You're assuming I don't already have a robot.
okay, with your robot,
Ah, there we go.
with your vacuum robot, I want one of those things so bad. I don't remember.
My wife wants one. Yeah.
Oh man. Actually, they have them for the yard now. You can get like self-controlled lawn mowing robots. It's crazy.
Can they get a robot that'll actually make my lawn grow?
No. You can get off your couch and do that yourself.
I can get my butt off the couch?
You can
Or
get
the
your
couch off
the
my butt?
You can't even say it wrong right. Yeah. My work here is done. Anyway, so if you went to turn off your robot and it was, begging for its life, how would you feel about that?
Well, knowing that it doesn't actually have real emotions or a soul, yeah, I would just unplug it from the wall.
Okay. So,
My heart is buried in a tomb of ice. What can I say?
nice. Well, then you would not appreciate the story, so I'm going to just say it anyway for the Super Friends. They love me. So a recent experiment by German researchers basically took two groups of people, this whole study group. So you've got a control group and a regular group. So in the regular group, they just had these different actions that they have the robot do. They would either, have questions for the robot or organize schedules or all kinds of things like that. And then that was it. You're playing with the robot.
Okay.
The control group, however, that was the control group. The other group, however, they would go through the same tasks, but when they went to turn, and the final task of all this was to turn off the robot. But in this other group, when they went to go turn off the robot would actually start saying things like, "No, please don't switch me off." And, different phrases to basically beg for its life, more or less.
Wow. So making it sound like it's got sentience.
Yeah. So 43 volunteers in that group. 13 actually refused to turn off the robot. And 30 of the others, on average, took twice as long to actually turn off the robot than the ones who didn't hear anything at all. So, obviously, some kind of effect. I know it would probably actually take me twice as long, even if I know it's a robot, just because I'm kind of stunned.
What if it's HK-47? Don't turn me off, meatbag.
Well, then I'd already be dead, because he would have shot me the moment I tried to.
That's what I'm saying.
But so people were explaining the reason that they refused to turn off the robot, mostly because they were surprised by the pleas, like I would have been. Other people thought they were actually doing something wrong. But the most common response was simply because the robot said it didn't want to be switched off. So why would they disagree with that?
My kids don't want to eat dinner either, but I'm not going to not feed them because they said they don't want to eat.
That's not a valid comparison. It's not like you're saving the robot's life by turning it off.
But I'm saving my kids' life by making them eat.
Exactly. This is not about the kids. It's about the robots.
Okay, so here's my take on this. Spencer's hot take right now. It's a robot. It's an inanimate object. It's programmed to say these things. As an adult, as a human being, you should be smart enough to understand this. And you should look at this and say, it's a hunk of junk. It's a piece of metal with some wires. Unplug that crap. It's a big, giant friggin' toaster. We all know what happens when you let toasters become sentient. They become freaking Cylons, and they kill all of humanity, and they hunt us down.
Yeah, but then eventually they get really hot and multiply themselves, and you have tons of them everywhere. So
I do not want to be responsible for Skynet, and I'm not going to do it, so I will unplug said robots.
So you would not even hesitate?
No, not at all.
It wouldn't even stun you for a second, like, what the heck's going on here?
I would probably be laughing as I pull the plug. It would be like, really? Did that robot just beg for its life? It doesn't have a life. Beep, boop, beep. Please do not unplug me. That's exactly what would happen.
You are cold.
I'm just saying, come on.
One of the responses, I was curious whether the robot would continue interacting with me.
Yeah, I mean, there might be like the humor part of me, the dark side. They'd be like, how much can I get this thing to beg? Like, if I pull the cord a little bit, it's like, no, please. Like, how much can I get it to beg? And then still pull the plug?
Wow.
Is that considered robot torture? Like,
you're going to be one of the first ones to go.
is there a Gitmo for robots?
Oh, we're learning all kinds of things about Spencer on this show, aren't we, super
Dark
friends?
things.
Help me. So if I'm an android, I'm pretty hosed.
So, super friends, if you're out there and you have robots that need to be terminated, call Spencer.
Hey, there's your new vocation.
Nice.
That'd be awesome. I mean, I'm actually pro-robot in this, but for money, I'd turn them all off.
So what you're saying is you'd be a contract killer for robots?
Not too separate from what I do for a real living, Spencer.
We need to get the Terminator all up in here. All right. Would you like to go again since I skipped you?
No,
like
please.
To go back to back?
That would relieve you of some control here. Go ahead.
Okay. So the last thing I have, since I apparently skipped ahead.
Apparently?
Well, I mean, it's a thing. It may have happened. We got no proof. No one can say one way or another. Hashtag fake podcast news. We don't know what happened.
You're gonna edit it. You're gonna edit it, aren't you?
We got all the best Rebel Intelligence stories. We got all the best Rebel Intelligence.
All the Bothans are fine.
All the Bothans went to the best possible schools and got all the best Rebel Intelligence. Dude, I should edit that. All right, so we talked a while ago about Donald Glover and his brother Stephen Glover. They were going to write a animated Deadpool series for FX. Do you remember that?
I do.
We talked about it a little while ago. Apparently, we know the show got axed, but we didn't know, and we kind of speculated with it. We figured it was probably on Marvel's part. Well, we got some more details about that, and apparently Glover leaked 15 pages of his theoretical script for the show, and he also referenced the cancellation. He stated, for the record, I wasn't too busy to work on Deadpool, because some people thought maybe he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Now, the FX CEO, John Landgraf, revealed in an interview with Variety that the decision to part ways on the series was not FX, but Marvel. And he said, and they were asked, is there any chance of reviving this series with Glover and Marvel? And he says, no, I think Marvel will revive it because they have the rights. They didn't want to do the show that Donald and Steven wrote. It says we would have done the show. FX would have done the show they wrote, but it wasn't our decision. Marvel decided not to do it, so we parted company with them as long as so did Steven and Donald, basically. So for whatever reason, either they didn't like it or they've got other plans, but that means to me that we know Disney has the rights to Deadpool and they're going to do something with it in the future. What that's going to be, I do not know, but it wasn't Donald Glover's fault. Unless, of course, it was bad script writing, but I think he's a pretty good script writer, so I don't know if it's just them or a different direction, but there you go.
Sorry, as far as I'm concerned, if it's not Ryan Reynolds anymore, then it doesn't matter. Even in the comics, it's now Ryan Reynolds in the comics. That's how it goes.
You think Ryan Reynolds would do an animated version?
Do I think he would? Absolutely. He'd be like, oh, I can get paid to do some of those promos. Awesome.
Yeah.
He would do it. Oh, I know he would do it.
All right, what else do you got for me?
Oh, I get to go again.
Sure, why not?
Okay, well, speaking of Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool, Amazon and Walmart fit right into that in some way that will become clear to you in 3 episodes' time.
Yes.
So so we do have those ongoing stories, Stan Lee, yada yada. It seems like Amazon and Walmart's kind of making itself its own little episodic story of ours. So it's basically just the rivalry continues. Things are going further and further along the roadmap for our new our shop market thing.
Couch on the butt.
Couch on the butt. So Walmart's retail giants in the real world, Amazon retail giant in the online world. They're both kind of going at each other. Amazon is obviously taking some of the business away from Walmart. Their margins are already super small. So this rivalry is real. It's costing each other business every time one of them gets a leg up on things. Amazon has been trying to get into the retail market space with their, what was it? I don't even remember what it was called, but the cashierless shopping. You go in, you get all your stuff, you walk out with it. You never have to interact with another human being. Basically the physical internet. So Walmart has been working on its partnerships with Microsoft, who, if you don't know, Microsoft is also a major competitor to Amazon with cloud operations. Believe it or not, all the Amazon stuff requires a pretty hefty logistics system, and that's where Amazon spent most of its first few years in trying to build, which apparently has been very successful. So Walmart is now partnering with Microsoft Azure and Office 365, basically because Azure, if you don't know, is Microsoft's data management system, basically, and it's an interaction through data in some pretty remarkable ways. So it's looking like Walmart is going to be leveraging this Microsoft Azure technology into having its own cashierless brick and mortar store.
Really?
Which is very interesting, given that Walmart is now, like, as thin as their margins are, they're now thinner because all this pressure from political parties and from workforce has caused them to kind of force their hand into raising some wages, which doesn't help the margins very much. So it's like, oh yeah, we're going to go ahead and lift your wages and we're going to do all this. And then, yeah, next thing you know, chop, chop, chop. There's no humans involved in this interaction anywhere.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, so they're going that route. We talked about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that Walmart was looking at revamping its online streaming service into something to compete with Amazon. If you're into, it may not be robots, it's giant imaginary electron cloud-based systems, but there's a war afoot.
Can we kill them too?
Can they be the first to go?
Okay.
I mean, yeah, let's kill them all, but let's let Amazon win for a little while because I actually happen to like Amazon. So
the whole time you were talking about this, I'm paying attention, but in my mind, I've got like a music track playing because you're like, these worlds are colliding. I'm like, this is what it's like when worlds collide. Are you ready to go?
Yes,
go,
ready
to go.
You're not even doing it right.
Just saying. Whatever.
Hey, Power Man 5000 is the bomb.
Well, that's all I have for Rebel Intelligence. Are you out? Do you have any more?
No, I've got like 6 or 7 more stories.
Well, by all means, proceed.
No, I don't want to do it anymore.
Oh, so you're acquiescing now? Gotcha.
I'll leave it for next week.
Well, good. We'll have some rebels to give us some intelligences from the Bothans and the things.
Rebels, Bothan things, yes.
Rebel Bothan things, butt couch things, whatever. Last week we had a conversation about nerd cars, and we talked about some of our favorites and some of the things that really stood out to us. But we asked you, super friends, what were some of your favorite nerd cars growing up? What did you like? And you responded in droves this week. We got a lot of responses, and so we're going to read a few of them tonight. We normally start with the email, but this week, no email. Bum, bum, bum.
What? Where did all the emails go, Spencer?
I do not know, Stu. They disappeared, but we're going to go over to Facebook instead.
Okay.
So over on Facebook, Bruce Hudson says, Batmobile, specifically from Batman the Animated Series.
Uh-oh. I remember we were talking about that in pre-show, and I was like, we should talk about that one. I'm like, no.
Yeah, that'd be too many Batmobiles.
All right, Spencer gets another point. Spencer's dominating the show tonight. That's great. I'm looking for other podcasts.
On Facebook, Troy Jackson says, the Impala from Supernatural.
Ooh, yeah, that's definitely one that applies.
That's a show I've not seen, and I know everyone says it's good.
The funny thing is I've only watched a few episodes, but just because of how prevalent Supernatural is in our pop culture, I know about the Impala. I mean, that's a real thing, and that's a thing that people like. And so, missed that too. Dang it. We're being... So
we're going over to Twitter. We've got DSpin67, Nerdish67 at DSpin67 says, Kit from Knight Rider, Batmobile from the 60s TV show Batman, Mach 5 from Speed Racer. He says, I'm on a mission to find a die-cast replica of the Batmobile and the Mach 5. # question of the week.
The Mach 5. That's a big one.
Erica Marie at E is Fabulous says, Kit and Batmobile are my faves, with a bunch of emojis with little heart eyes. And then she says, I would also like Bumblebee from Transformers if he can count as a car.
Why is that so funny?
I don't know. You tell me.
I'm sorry, but was that a female?
Yes, that is right. Erica Marie.
What do we do?
We celebrate, man. We're having a party. I don't know. I got nothing else.
Female nerds are an awesome thing, and they're everywhere. So
yeah, Erica does respond on our stuff from time to time, and she does retweet us and whatnot. She is a good super friend of the show.
Hey, there you go.
So we are out of things on the Facebook. We are out of things on the Twitter. We do not have any emails.
And we never have any... Wait, what?
But, super friends, something has changed in the Fortress of Nerditude.
Yeah, we begged. We groveled.
Something monumentally shifted. The world has changed. And
the world is a vampire.
Bum, 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 bum. Boom, boom, set to drain. We got some voicemails, man.
What? The voicemail?
We got three. Trace. 1, 2, 3. So let's start off by listening to the first one from a good friend of the old podcast and an amazing retweeter and sharer of our podcast.
Agreed.
Hey, guys. Chad here. Bear the Hairless. Wanted to call. You wanted somebody to call you. I apologize. I meant to call before tonight. Anyways, in answer to your question for cool cars, nerdy cars, my personal favorite is probably the 67 Impala on the TV show Supernatural, though there were several other ones I wanted to bring up. Some classic, some not. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the old movie. And for the record, my wife was going to call, and she had a couple picked out that were her favorites. The Van from the A-Team, and Magnum P.I.'s Ferrari. Well, technically Robin's Ferrari, but Magnum always drove it. Christine from the Stephen King movie. The Car from the old The Car movie that was demon-possessed and killed people. The Flintstones car, kind of a classic there. The Starsky and Hutch car. Say, you guys aren't probably old enough to remember that, but I am. The Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am, though you may have mentioned that one, I don't remember. And then from Scooby-Doo, the Mystery Machine. Those are some classic nerd mobiles, at least I think so. Wanted to tell you, love the podcast. I know you've heard from me before, just always in Twitter or on Facebook or something. So, but here's a real live message, so, you know, you actually have someone calling your voicemail. Hopefully I'm not the only one this week, since, you know, Stu is practically begging people to call. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, love the podcast. We'll keep listening as long as you keep making them. We will talk to you later. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Okay, Chad Fackler at Bear the Hairless calling Stu out for begging for voicemails.
I get it from Spencer all the time. I'm trying to help him out. I feel like, and I mean, I'm glad that people are bringing up ones that we didn't think of, but I feel like we just got called out. Like so many good ones that he mentioned there. The Mystery Machine, for crying out loud.
Yeah, the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo. And he did mention the Starsky and Hutch car, which is I think a 67 Gran Torino.
I do remember that show. I grew up on it. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw the movie. I didn't watch the original TV show.
The movie is nothing like the show. Nothing.
But it's a beautiful, beautiful car. I really like the Fred Flintstone reference with the Flintstone mobile, because I was like, Yeah, that would have been technically like way back when a different take on a car, with kind of nerdy, would use an alternative fuel source.
Oh, there you go.
It's not exactly a Tesla, but
the first no carbon footprint car, except it had a footprint.
It did have a
few
footprint.
footprints.
Wow, very well done, Stu.
But then also, I love that he mentions Magnum PI's Ferrari, but then knows enough about it to say that it's actually Robin's Ferrari and not.
Right.
It's like, oh, that's some deep cuts. So
we didn't talk about the Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit, but that is a good car too.
No, the one thing. So he also mentioned Christine and the other car. I intentionally actually didn't bring those up because those are more horror. I didn't feel the nerdy connection, but that's all subjective anyway. So definitely those have a place too. So. Yeah, thanks.
Chad, coming in strong. I like it, calling us to task for missing stuff. That's awesome. Perfect. That's what we needed. So thank you, Chad. Thank you for hitting us up on the voicemail.
Next time, let the wife call too, so we have 4 voicemails.
Yeah. He did say like she was going to call in, but then she didn't. I'm like, what happened there? Is she okay? Did she fall down a well? Is Lassie looking for her? Let us know. Is Jen okay? Is Jen okay? That's all we want to know.
Is multiple phone calls to the show not acceptable nerd dates? I don't understand.
Someone could look at that as a date. You call in, then I call in, and we try to top each other. I don't know.
Right.
Let's move on to our next voicemail. This is from our good old friend D-Spin.
Yes, sir. How are you? Long time never seen. This your boy D-Spin, a.k.a. D-Spin. I'm kidding. I would say, because I'm probably older than a lot of other people. My favorite nerd cards would be Kit from Knight Rider. I love the little LED that was going across the front of the car. I love the Mach 5 from Speed Racer. That was another favorite car. I love it because it had you push a button and the little things would jump and make the car shoot across, whatever he needed to get away from. It had the little razor. He pushed another button, the little saws come out the front. I love that. And also, I'm a very big fan of the Batmobile from the original Batman TV show. I love that car. That's probably my favorite nerd car. I would say the other car that would make the list is the DeLorean. It would have like an asterisk beside it, but the DeLorean from the Back to the Future movies. Anyway, great podcast, guys. We'll be listening out. You guys have a great day. Talk to you later.
D-Spin, a.k.a. D-Spin. I love that. I love that.
My question for the asterisk on the DeLorean is that like 4 to 6 weeks for shipping?
It's called 10 to 12 for possession.
I mean, the asterisk could mean anything. I really think it's because we all know the car is going to fall apart, but I don't want to assume anything.
Did you even think about the Mach 5 from Speed Racer?
I didn't. Man, and that's an obvious.
Yeah, I don't know how he missed that one either. But I do like that he hits up Kit and Batmobile. I mean, obviously, classic, iconic, and then, the DeLorean.
Asterisk.
Out of time.
Oh, now you remember.
Well, I mean, I listened to last week's, and then I edited it, and, I got it now. I got it now, baby. Come on.
All right.
Chill. All right, let's go to this last one. This is, I think this is from a new listener, someone who doesn't ever respond.
Hello, Fortress of Nerditude. This is super friend Peter Christensen. I recognize groveling when I hear it, so here's your phone call. Spencer, despite your distaste, how could you possibly do a whole conversation about pop culture cars without mentioning the Fast and the Furious? Dom's classic Chevelle faithfully follows him all around the world. Honorable nerd culture vehicles are the bicycles from Goonies, E.T., Stranger Things, and Pee-wee's Big Adventure. My favorite movie cars were the Mini Coopers from The Italian Job. There were a lot of scenes that took advantage of their small size and lots of great stunt driving. Cheers, Peter. P.S. Did you purposely choose episode 88, as in miles per hour, for the car episode?
Oh, Peter.
Who is that guy? Never heard of him.
I Gosh darn it. When I saw that, I was like, I bet you he's going to bring up Fast and the Furious somehow and Dom Chevelle.
Yeah, it's apt.
That is a pretty amazing car.
Though it did not appear in Tokyo Drift.
Well, that's because he wasn't in Tokyo Drift, was he?
Nope.
Actually, I heard that he may have had like a little, like at the very, very end credits, like at the very end, they may have showed his car driving somewhere, like on a beach or something. I'm sure Peter can let us know and tell us because he's got these movies memorized.
Or I'll just watch it again, either way.
That too.
The 88 miles an hour.
How awesome
Total
is that?
coinkydink.
Yeah, that was not planned, but I'm glad
I have no idea where the inspiration for sort of the Bumblebee thing. I'm going to take credit. It was my idea for the show, the autos.
Yep.
But I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I was getting ready to hit 88 miles an hour. Yeah. I may have driven 88 miles an hour.
And can we just take a minute to pause and reflect the fact that he said a special shout out, like an honorable mention to bicycles?
Yeah.
Because he not only said like, hey, we should look at these and recognize these as kind of cool nerd vehicles, but he had some amazing ones, aka the bicycles from Goonies. Like
Stranger Things,
and then freaking like probably the best bicycle reference in all movie history, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where the whole freaking movie is based around a bicycle and trying to recover a bicycle,
which actually could be considered some kind of automobile. It had some. So what, didn't it have like a little jet propulsion thing on it at one point?
Yeah, just dude, seriously, Peter, that was awesome. I loved that. Shout out to the bikes.
And I like the Mini Coopers. Italian Job was an awesome movie.
I don't remember the Italian Job very well because I feel like I saw it once way back in the day.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
I've got it. I just need to go back and watch it again.
Well, I don't mean to spoil anything for you, but it's Italian. And it's a job.
Oh, dang it. Now why?
And they're Mini Coopers.
Oh, well, now I know everything.
Yep.
I know everything about that movie now. Thank you so much, Peter Christensen, D-Spin, a.k.a. D-Spin, and Chad Fackler at Bear the Hairless, for your voicemails. I'm glad that all of them recognized Stu's groveling and begging and indulged us this week. We appreciate
it was awesome.
That.
It's awesome.
If you want to be as cool as these three fine super friends, or Jen Fackler almost was, you can call us on our phone number, which is 801-477-7687. You can always respond to our questions in the other ways, which is our email, which is fortofnerd@gmail.com, or Facebook, which is facebook.com/fortofnerd, or our Twitter, which is @fortofnerd. But once again, the voicemail is a guaranteed way to get on the show. And that's 801-477-7687. Call now and get your free Michael Jordan basketball.
And if we get enough voicemails, we actually can just like kick off the show, play all the voicemails, and thanks for joining.
Right? That'd be kind of fun. We could do that one episode. So, thank you once again so much. Stu, our super friends came out in full force this week.
They did.
You begged them, you asked them, you pleaded, they did it. How can they help us this week?
Well, I'm feeling like I have this, buried superpower that's coming out now. And so I'm going to say if they could actually supply a flux capacitor, we could get this baby off the ground and go 88 miles an hour and go back to the future.
Or go back in time and get some sweet iTunes reviews, maybe?
Well, only if they're 5 stars.
Okay.
Because if they give us 5-star ratings on iTunes, that helps us get our name out there, and it helps us appear on lists, and it helps people find the podcast, and it's really just the best way to let us know that you appreciate the show, and we want more people to listen in and join the fun.
So if they go back in time with their DeLoreans and they give us 5 stars and they do all these things, will it also mean that Dean Strickland won't call us slackers?
It will, and it may mean that we actually could become a popular podcast before you even had the first episode.
Ooh, maybe before podcasts were even a thing.
With the first podcast, oh my gosh.
Oh man, we'd be so hipster.
If you could give us all those 5-star reviews now, we promise as soon as we get a time machine, we're going to make that happen.
I love that idea.
I mean, winning sports, betting and everything else, and being set for life would be
Yeah.
good too. But
Who needs Gray's Almanac and, make some sports bets? No, we're just going to go back and start the first podcast.
yeah, or we could take one of Amazon's future flying cars and take it back to when we were promised flying cars.
In our Uber Lyft. Yep, I like it.
That's true.
I like it. So, Stu, what's new? What's going on?
So even though I haven't really had a lot of free time, I've been getting kind of hyped up. And this happens to me every time. World of Warcraft, they've got an expansion that's just over a week away. Battle for Azeroth.
Is it that close?
Yeah, August 15th.
Jeez.
Yeah. So the way I play World of Warcraft is new expansion comes out. I get all excited for it. I love new features of MMOs, and that's really the best delivery model ever. EverQuest still pumps out new expansions every year, but they're really just more content of a different flavor every time, and it's really just to keep the game alive for the people that do still faithfully play it. But World of Warcraft comes out with new features, new ways of playing the game that add to the experience and give you something else to care about. Because let's face it, like with EverQuest, if you're playing EverQuest still, it's because you love that model of the game and you want nothing to change at this point. And so you're still playing it and you're still getting that content year after year. But with World of Warcraft and with any other game, really, like any expansion to any game, you need to build on it. You don't just add another area to the game. You have to do something new and fresh. So that's why I play World of Warcraft. New expansion comes out. I check out the new hotness. I get into it. They have a chapter mode of releasing patches to those expansions now. There's always 3 patches. Each one of them actually has a self-contained chapter of the story now that continues on. That's a great way to do it, but because the game is pretty much the same and it's just new lore, I tend to get bored after the first update, and then it goes away, and then 2 years after the release, there's a new expansion released, and I do that all over again. So I'm right there. I'm excited. They already released the pre-patch for Battle for Azeroth, and I'm ready to dive in. So I know you had played World of Warcraft before, right?
Yeah, I did. I played back around 2007, 2008. So I played, in vanilla days. I played Burning Crusade, I played Wrath of the Lich King, and then I played Cataclysm, and that's when I bounced out of the game.
Okay, so interesting note, Cataclysm didn't release until December 7th, 2010.
Well, I mean, I did play for a few years.
Yeah, so
I started around 7, 8, somewhere around there.
Gotcha. So yeah, so what do you remember about Cataclysm?
I remember I didn't like it very much.
Yeah?
Because, Wrath of the Lich King for me was my favorite of the expansions that I played. It was amazing. I loved the story of the Ice-Crowned Citadel, the big raid at the end. I loved Arthas. Yeah. I loved the Lich King. I loved the fact that I felt like that story tied back directly into Warcraft 3, which I played that RTS quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And so I loved the lore and I loved the story, and I felt like it was probably, for me, my favorite content. And then, of course, like that raid was hard. It was not easy. It was lengthy. You couldn't just face roll it. You couldn't just go through and just, destroy it.
Now that raid was infamous for actually destroying guilds.
Yeah, absolutely. That final fight, when you actually fight the Lich King, was so difficult because I was actually running a raid group back then. I was a co-guild leader. I was running the alpha raid team in our guild. There was a Bravo and I think a Charlie that was just starting. And we struggled so hard to find quality people that could actually hold their own. Primarily healers. We struggled with healers. Like we'd get a decent
As a
healer.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, we'd get a decent healer, but then like our second healer in the group would just be decent, not great. And we needed 2 great healers in that fight, and we were geared for that fight. It was just hard, and we ended up jumping servers. Our whole raid team, except for 1 or 2 people, jumped servers, went to a more populous server, and ended up finding the healers we needed. And within like 3 weeks of server transferring, we downed the Lich King for the first time, and then we started farming them.
Yeah, there were. It was pretty infamous that would happen. Like, I remember watching the boards at the time, and there are always people that were willing to transfer. But that was, I think, was the first time that like new raid force or guild looking for new home kind of thing, and
right,
that was really, really intense for a lot of people. And I was actually. That was my heyday of raiding as well. I was actually raiding with Jinx, the guys that do all the World of Warcraft apparel. I was a Death Knight on the raid team. And even with that, these guys understand that primarily most of the raid force were people that actually worked for the Jinx clothing brand. And there were a few of us that were ancillary, but part of the main raid force. Even the people that worked together, there was some bitterness at times, and there was some crazy things that happened and people got upset with each other. But I'll also say the absolute best favorite moment I ever had in World of Warcraft was at that time, after we had downed the Lich King, there was also, there were some other raids, and there was this, there were like one-off dragons, and Sartharian specifically in hard mode, which was in the realm of Sartharian, you had 3 mini raid bosses. And the heroic mode was to actually kill one or more, or to leave one or more of them alive when you went and attacked Sartharian. So the more you had, the tougher it was, because they each had their own special mechanics, and he adopted their mechanics as well. So my favorite moment, we had been working on Sarth 3D, which is all 3 Drakes, for weeks and weeks and weeks after our regular raids. And it was like 20 minutes on a boss, and it just, oh my gosh, it was grueling, and we were all doing things. And there's just this one attempt. It was weird because from the very moment we started that attempt, everyone was just moving like water, and it felt like everything was in slow motion, and everyone was on point with going where they needed to be, picking up the mobs that they needed to. Healers were doing their thing beautifully. Crowd control had everything going on. And we had this 15-minute fight against Sartharian, and it was just all super perfect. And I remember the moment we killed that son of a gun, and we weren't even close in the attempts before that. Like, we weren't like, oh my gosh, one more time we're going to do it. But it was just this amazing cohesion that reminded me exactly why I love the accomplishments of raiding, because that was freaking brutal, and we pulled it off. And I've talked to a couple people since then from Jinx, and actually another buddy of mine who was with us at the time. And I mean, all of them remember that moment. Hands down, that was unforgettable.
Yeah.
So that to me was the epitome and pinnacle of MMO content.
Yeah, I loved raiding. I mean, a raid is just basically a big, long series of boss fights that progressively get harder, have different mechanics that you've got to learn, and you got to coordinate with a big group. I loved that. It was challenging, it was rewarding. When you would finally knock down a boss that you'd been working on for weeks or sometimes months, it was so rewarding. And the shout, oh my goodness, the shout that always would go up over TeamSpeak or whatever we were using at the time, when everyone would lose their freaking mind because we finally did it, was a moment of like pure joy, right?
Well, yeah. So, and the funny thing is that moment with Sarth, we all actually, after we killed it, our vent was completely silent. We had 25 people on vent, and nobody breathed, nobody said anything, nobody hooped, nobody hollered for about 4 or 5 seconds, and then all collectively at once, when we all realized what happened, it went nuts, and I think I'm still deaf from it.
Yeah. Yeah, we used vent, we used TeamSpeak for a while, and it was kind of the same thing, although we always had the one guy that, like, for some reason, his internet was always like a little better than everyone else's. And so you hear this, hell yeah! And then all of a sudden everyone's like, yeah! Like, you know, like a second later, and you're like, oh, we must have beat it, you know, because his internet was better or whatever. But I find that I really enjoyed my time in MMOs, and specifically World of Warcraft, because I also played the Old Republic after I left WoW, and I enjoyed that game, and I thought I was going to be real big into that game because it was Star Wars, and there was just no end game content, and so it made me want to come back to WoW. And admittedly, Stu, after Cataclysm, because I left after Wrath of the Lich King, after we did the Arthas fight and beat the Lich King a number of times and kind of farmed out what we needed, I kind of walked away. And I know a lot of players will do this. Like at the end of a big expansion, once they've kind of done all the content, they'll just kind of walk away and they'll wait for the next expansion before they come back. And I didn't really plan on coming back for Kata, and then I had some friends that were like, come back. And I came back and I raided Kata, got to the end game content and just did the raids again. And I enjoyed it, but I did not enjoy it as much as the Wrath of the Lich King. And then after that, I just kind of walked away, and I haven't come back. But here's the thing. You made me watch the cinematic trailers for Battle for Azeroth.
I sure did.
Those look so good. So good.
So this to me, and it's weird, like, I think Blizzard, they're smart freaking people. You don't get, what their heyday 15 million people all at once, subscribed at once without having some serious science behind everything you're doing. And that has to go into the lore as well. They know exactly where I want to be with WoW. Like, I loved Legion. Legion so far has been my favorite expansion. I know Wrath of the Lich King is actually many people's favorites. It's a very close second for me, but Legion was it was so good. And I'll talk about that in a second. But Wrath of the Lich King was really good. My problem with Legion, which we'll also talk about, is at the end of it, Horde and Alliance really kind of have to come together. And it felt to me like they were trying to blur the lines, and make it more about a gaming fun experience than it was about Horde versus Alliance. And they had to come together to really kind of deal with Sargeras and everything else. And it felt like it lost some of the uniqueness of Horde or Alliance. I mean, I have a Horde sticker on my Corvette that's pretty nerdy, and it's the best way I can think to represent Horde for life. But it feels homogenized. There were a couple story elements at the end of Legion that I'm just now getting to because I'm kind of catching up, that kind of set a few things in motion. But Battle for Azeroth, it knew it was homogenized. It knew it needed to separate itself out. We are more Horde versus Alliance than ever. And actually, we'll talk about some infighting with the Horde as well. It just, oh my gosh, it's got my blood pumping, man. I'm
Are you
not
going to
a
make
PvP
me get
guy.
this thing? Are you going to make me get this thing?
You haven't downloaded it yet?
No, but I did take a look at my specs while you were talking to see.
I mean,
if
you're
my
Horde,
computer
so
could
we
run
got to
it.
do this. I'm not a PvP guy.
I am Horde.
I am not a PvP guy, mostly
me
because
neither.
most PvP mechanics are horrible. With a good game, I did play PvP in Star Wars for a while. That was actually fun. But I'm ready to kick some Alliance butt. I want to. I
So
want in this.
are you still a healer? Is that primarily the class you enjoy playing?
I haven't played a healer for a while, mostly because healers reliant on others. But I could easily be convinced. Right now, I've got a Demon Hunter though. He's so fun and he's tanky.
If you were to take one guess, what class do you think I play?
Shaman.
I did play a shaman for a while. I love to tank.
Yeah, see, I love to tank too.
That is like that became
But
like
healing too.
I prided myself on my tanking ability. I was like, I want to be the number one tank on my freaking server.
My problem is that I really only like, it's difficult because priests change every expansion. Shamans are the only really consistent healers, but they're group heals, and I don't know. So we're spending a lot more time talking about just our experiences with WoW. I actually wanted to quickly kind of go over, so the mechanics, right? Kind of leading up to where we're at. So I wanted to talk about where WoW has come from. What were some of the highlights of each of the expansion? Talk about some of the things that we liked about them, or at least in concept if you haven't played them yet. And just kind of run through them really quick. There's a lot of stuff. We couldn't cover it in one show. I don't have any focus on PvP because that would literally be its own show.
Take forever.
Yep. So November 23rd, 2004, the beginning of it all. This was the 10th anniversary of Warcraft. There was stiff competition. EverQuest was still actually doing really well, though its latest expansion had actually kind of alienated a lot of players. It was Gates of Discord. So a lot of people are looking to jump ship from EverQuest. It was kind of really non-playable content. the basic gist of this, because it's interesting, is that they plan to increase the level cap from 65 to 70 with Gates of Discord. But then last moment production, they decided not to increase the level cap, and they wanted to kind of slow it down with their future plans. Problem is that they had already designed the entire game for level 70 content, and the cap was then 65. So that made it really difficult to do a lot of things in the game. So EverQuest, people jumping ship. Also, EverQuest 2 had just hit. EverQuest 2 did beat Warcraft by a couple months, mostly because Warcraft wanted to wait until the 10th anniversary to launch. There were a lot of problems with World of Warcraft when it first came out. They had done a major overhaul of all this, most of the systems in the game right before beta ended. A lot of the features weren't well received, so they did a major overhaul a couple months after that. But despite that, it still had enough of a draw to get some immediate attention. The graphics for it, even though they're more cartoony, they're embellished, and you have orcs and taurens with these huge shoulders, right? And you actually get to look tough as a character. They're all very unique. And the best thing I think that they could have done at that time was they made it more of a theme park rather than a sandbox. And the game guides you through how you're going to play. You have these guys with these bright yellow exclamation marks over their heads telling you what, come talk to me for something to do. And they lead you through the game, through the quests like that. Whereas EverQuest, and even EverQuest 2, even though it's a little easier to use, is still really kind of open and you have to kind of find your own way. So it kind of guides you through it. They also did instanced dungeons and raids. So basically, if you go into an instance dungeon, you're the only group that's there.
Right.
In EverQuest, they had what you now call, it was at the time was the only thing, so it didn't have a name, but they're now called contested, which means that it's an open dungeon. You actually walk into it as everybody else does, and it's the same instance of the dungeon, and it's shared between everybody, and it's hard to get, boss content and all that kind of stuff, because if someone else is there camping it, good luck, especially if you need it for an epic quest, blah, blah, blah. So instance dungeons and raids was a godsend into MMOs. EverQuest had been tinkering with it, but kind of decided it wasn't worthwhile. Oops. So World of Warcraft takes this, they run with it. Fantastic. There's this talent system that lets you specialize your character. Downside is that really, if you're going to raid, you had to have a certain selection of all those talents. So it was a good and bad thing. You had a level cap of 60. And then something that was kind of unique was that Hordes had Shaman. Only Horde had Shaman.
Right.
And Alliance only had Paladins.
Right.
Which was a major flub, because most of the mechanics in the original World of Warcraft, you needed Paladins for. So Alliance did have a legitimate upper hand in raiding and a lot of the world firsts, because no Pallies on Horde.
Right. Now, this is traditionally now referred to as Vanilla WoW, right? Because this is the original iteration.
Yep. This is Vanilla WoW. This is no expansions. Oddly enough, they're also coming out with Classic WoW, which has yet to have a release date, but it will be the original vanilla. Well, it'll be Vanilla WoW with the patches that they had at the time up until just before the first expansion.
Right. I think we talked about that.
Yeah, and so that's going to be, that's going to get some people's attention. So, yeah, I mean, World of Warcraft was a beast of an MMO, and it came out, it got everybody's attention. It was more casual friendly, which was a big flub of EverQuest. EverQuest 2 fixed it somewhat, but EverQuest was difficult to get into, especially if you weren't, a role player. And that was really it. EverQuest was designed to be an online game for role players, or people that like D&D, maybe not necessarily role playing. WoW came out and said, we want to be a game that everyone wants to play. They didn't necessarily nail it all the way at first, but it was a great running start, right? So you said that you did start in Classic, or
no?
Burning
Crusade? I started right towards the end of Burning Crusade, right as Lich King was getting ready to drop. But of course, that meant I got to play through all the vanilla WoW content.
Right. So did you do any of the Molten Core, things like that?
I did, but it was kind of after the fact, so
you were overpowered and awesome.
Yeah, but it was also the point where most people hadn't played that or hadn't played it in a long time. So when you go back, you were overpowered and awesome, but you'd still flub up a lot of the mechanics, and
which makes it more awesome, in my opinion.
Yeah.
No, I loved the vanilla World of Warcraft stuff, though it did not get my attention because EverQuest 2 came out and because I was an old-time EverQuest player. EverQuest 2 really had everything I wanted. I dabbled into WoW, but not really until after January 16th, 2007, when the Burning Crusade came out.
right.
So Burning Crusade. Burning Crusade takes a lot of the storylines from Warcraft and continues them on, which to me was also one of the things that kind of was missing from World of Warcraft. You had all the races, you had the orcs, you had the humans. They were faithful representations of the, the cartoony characters, but the storylines were kind of just unique to WoW, and that's great and all, but they'd been building up this immense storyline through the original Warcraft all the way up through Frozen Throne of Warcraft 3.
Right. Yep.
So they bring that in. This is like 5 years after the Dark Portal is opened. They actually have some Caverns of Time, which relates back to the events in Warcraft 3. Also, they had introduced Blood Elves as paladins for the Horde.
Yeah, the Belfs.
And, right. Oh my gosh, there's a quest line. Oh, anyway. I'm going to digress into nowhere here. So Draenei for shamans for the Alliance.
Yep.
Thus solving the mechanical problem through, adding some flavor and new characters. I got to talk about it. There's this one quest for the Forsaken where you actually go to talk to somebody and they make you a quest giver. And they have these 3 characters that come up and get quests from you. And one of them is a blood elf. And through the whole quest line, they keep referring to, there's one other guy who's infatuated with him, thinking it's a girl. Oh man, funny stuff. Anyway, so level caps increased to 70. They add jewel crafting, flying mounts. That was amazing, which was only in Outland at the time. And the introduction of I would say it's related to the most. Anyway, Dungeon Finder. We'll talk about that a little bit more later for a reason. But it continued the story of Illidan. And it brought up the events since the Frozen Throne. It had some crazy raids with the Black Temple. That was my first experience with a really tough raid. We did Molten Core, but that wasn't tough. That was just preposterous. We didn't ever get to where we thought we could finish it.
Now, as I recall, in Vanilla WoW and Burning Crusade, that was when you could have a 40-man raid and a 25-man raid.
Yes, the 40-man raids, that was Molten Core was the original one.
Right.
Boy, oh boy. I think I want to say that Black Temple was actually 25-man, though. I don't recall.
I don't recall. All I know is trying to get together 40 people to raid.
Yeah.
That could be a nightmare.
Black Temple was an enormous raid. I mean, I know the bosses take a long time and you go through things, but Black Temple kicked that up a notch. That thing was huge. And there was so much story that was driven around it, and we all loved Illidan stuff, even though he was the bad guy for a time. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
What's really interesting, and I want to hit on this real quick, is that this is a big online community-driven game, but up to this point, I mean, when the Dungeon Finder was introduced, that made it easy so you could get in and quickly run some dungeons, get some gear. But if you wanted to do endgame content, if you wanted to do the big raids, you had to be part of guilds. You had to find groups.
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't a looking for raid group. You had to go onto forums and try to find, people that were looking, or you'd sit in Orgrimmar and you'd shout out, looking for one more, pally to run, blah, blah, blah. Looking for a tank for this, looking for a healer for that, and then just try to, find someone and check their gear score and make sure they look like they were ready to do that. A lot of time wasted on
spent on coordinate.
Yeah, spent.
So
you spend 2 hours to get some person. Yeah.
One of the funny things about this, though, is through all this, World of Warcraft had slowly been killing the social element of MMOs. One of the things that the EverQuest had over World of Warcraft at the time, and still hadn't completely died yet for all intents and purposes, was that while you're looking for a group or while you have downtime in a group, you were talking to people and you were making friends. And guilds originally in EverQuest were not this massive 1,000 people throw numbers at every kind of problem thing. Guilds in EverQuest formed because these were friends. These were people that had similar interests, that had the same playtimes, that trusted each other. That was huge.
Right.
And actually got together. Guilds were a result of the social elements of EverQuest, converse to needing to have guilds to begin with WoW and not feeling like you even belong if you don't belong to a guild. There's really no selectivity anymore. But so WoW comes along. WoW makes the game a little bit easier. You don't have any downtime between fights. They made the game so that you could go from fight to fight to fight, maybe some heals, whatever. Dungeon Finder took that a step further in that you didn't have to sit there and talk to people to gather groups together.
Yeah, you just put your name in a list and you just wait until you get an open spot, and then you run.
Yep. So that was a major thing that will contribute to some things I'll be talking about later. But first, everybody's favorite, Wrath of the Lich King, November 13th, 2008. Lich King Arthas emerges from the Icecrown Citadel basically to take over the world. Bra-ha-ha. Arthas was the bad guy's bad guy. He was...
Yep.
I mean, the element of frost to that couldn't have been more perfect. Just the blue coldness of it is kind of like a metaphor for being soulless.
He's the Darth Vader of World of Warcraft.
He really, really is, exactly. And I hadn't even thought about that until now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So with the Lich King, however, comes Death Knights.
Yep. New class, hero class.
At the time, my favorite class, I was... Funny enough, I have my tattoo for Decal. That all came about because everyone was calling Death Knights DKs, K for cow. I'm like, DK, what could I do? Decal. Hey, Torrents can be Death Knights. Yay, here we go. So that was the birth of Decal, which really became my online persona for the rest of my life. But Death Knights were just so awesome, and they had that awesome reverb voice. They gave an extra kick to the classes. Like, you could be a Tarn anything else, and they all sound the same. Tarn Death Knight? Oh, no. So, yeah, and that was just, the raids were so much fun, and Northrend itself was fun. The lore that they attached to that was so deep, still considered to be some of the best content. Some less important things, level cap went up to 88. They did increase having flying. They also increased the speed of flying to 310%, which doesn't seem like a lot until you actually have it. Then it's like, woohoo!
Yeah, how did we ever do this before?
It actually became quicker to use a flying mount than it did to use the flying masters and take the flights everywhere.
I called them the Pony Express.
Yep.
That's what it was. So here's something else that I think happened around this time, Wrath of the Lich King. Prior to Wrath of the Lich King, there was a lot of add-ons for WoW that you could get. So you wanted to make it easier to find the quests and know right where to go, so you don't have to waste a bunch of time searching. You could actually go to websites and download things. You could download raid timers. You could get meters to know how much threat you were pulling if you were a tank. And eventually, right around the Wrath of the Lich King, Blizzard started incorporating a lot of that into the game itself, which I thought was a big addition because it cut down on it did cut down on the number of like third-party things that you had to run, which could break elements of the game or cause problems for people. And I like that integration.
So interesting that you bring that up, because that actually started right around the end of Burning Crusade. Is that World of Warcraft actually changed their licensing for add-ons, and they told people that you could not charge money for add-ons, which actually people started to do. Right. So with that, to counteract that, they actually started I don't know if it was buying or just saying, hey, we have the license for it, it's ours now. But they actually it wasn't just a coincidence that this had a good feature. They actually took real add-ons and made that add-on a part of the code, right?
Yeah.
So and those things actually made raiding and grouping and all that kind of stuff even much more feasible in the end of bringing everything to the casual player, even raiding.
Or questing, if you were running another character up and you didn't want to like, oh gosh, I don't want to go find these 6 scales. You just turn on the little thing and it point you like, go here, go here, go here, and you're done.
Yeah, throw on some music and some video on YouTube and go on autopilot and just plow through the game.
Yep.
And we saw a couple like add-on subscription services. I don't remember the name of it, but there's one that basically has a quest pack every new expansion that really just walks you through everything and it becomes autopilot. I hate that, but it's fun when you're bringing up a new character and whatever. They also did one other important thing. Reputation was always a grind in World of Warcraft.
Yes. Horrible.
So one thing that they did that I wish they kind of would have brought back is they introduced tabards for all these for these different factions. They actually really did a lot of work on the faction systems. And once you got to a certain level with it, you could actually buy this tabard that basically let you overwrite the faction you would expect to get, say, from a dungeon. If you're wearing a tabard for a different faction, all the rep you would get would be for that faction instead. So you could reach Exalted with the ones that you wanted more. And that actually helped a lot with good faith with players in and being able to get through the rep that they wanted and not care about the others that they didn't need so much.
Yep.
So that was good stuff. So now we're kind of getting about to the end of Spencer's heyday in World of Warcraft with Cataclysm, released December 7th, 2010. Deathwing the Destroyer, Mega Dragon, who really I thought was really ugly, just got to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, he comes along, he sunders Azeroth, introduces some new zones that were actually part of the lore and earlier games, but not World of Warcraft, including Mount Hyjal. The major thing that it did is it revamped all of the Eastern Kingdoms in Kalimdor, which to me was actually interesting because they redid all new quest lines and the quest lines surrounded Deathwing. And I think it was the first time that they really brought new players along for the expansion experience. Wrath of the Lich King, nothing changed for you until you got to Northrend. So it didn't matter to you. And the whole thing for a new character was, okay, well, I got to level this up real quick just so I can do all the stuff that my friends are doing much later on. Cataclysm got me to play some new characters, actually incentivized me to go through the game again to experience new things. So that was cool. We also saw with that revamp, came a recoding of the game, which allowed them to add flying in the old world zones.
Which was cool.
It was cool, but it was also another small nail in the removal of social needs of the game because suddenly everyone was in and out. Nobody was sticking around the towns. You didn't gather anymore on foot, which is a weird thing, but it mattered. So that was there. They introduced goblins and worgen. I'm still not sure how I feel about that. Goblins were so small that you didn't really... I like bigger character models. They're just so much more detailed. Worgen Alliance, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, cool shape-shifting. And it was cool that the Worgen actually were their own mounts, that they could shape-shift into their running form, which druids have been doing all along. So, haha, Worgen. But they also unlocked a lot of the race and class combinations. So even though we had introduced Belfs and Draenei to be shamans and paladins, you were still really limited in how those things worked. So now new class combinations, Taurens could be priests, which was interesting. I don't remember all of them. Oh gosh, there's so many of them, but it just allowed everyone to kind of play a lot more of what they wanted to play. They also had a major revamp of the talent system. And now I'm losing my voice, dang it. So they had a revamp of the talent system. This was a major overhaul. This upset a lot of players. People were used to the system that they had in place forever. And now it really kind of streamlined it into now you had one of 3 choices for everything, and that was it.
Right, yeah. It did take away a lot of the individuality.
Yeah, and they even gave specific class abilities to other classes. Like shamans had bloodlust. Nobody else had bloodlust. Suddenly, hunters have bloodlust, mages have bloodlust. And then even later on, in later expansions, they even had items that did it. So it took away that need, which does 2 things. It allows people to bring their characters so that they can play the characters that they want, which I get and I appreciate. It doesn't force people into, hey, we can't raid because we don't have a shaman tonight. But at the same time, it removed that reason that people do play those classes.
Right.
So double-edged sword... overall, in the end, I think it worked, but I think there were some heavy prices to pay for that. They also introduced archaeology as a trade skill, which I actually had some fun with. It brought you in with the lore and gave you a little extra something to do.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
But it also brought about what would be the greatest nail to the head of socialization and MMO history across any game.
Oh yeah,
the Raid Finder.
I hated that. So let me tell you why. And this is probably why I put down World of Warcraft. And this maybe sounds a little elitist, but if you wanted to be end game raider, if you wanted to call yourself a true raider, you had to put in work. You had to find a group. You had to, make friends. You had to work together. And once they added in the raid finder, it was like, then you're just queuing up and you could just do it without having to have a group. And those raids sucked so hard. If you're like, hey, I just want to jump in real fast and, hopefully get a good group. Because you had no clue what you're going to get. A lot of people who had never raided before who wanted to try it out, so they figured that was the good way to go. And you just had a lot of people that weren't prepared. Raiding is meant to be difficult. It's meant to be a social aspect of the game where you have to work and coordinate and talk. And all of a sudden, you got half your team not on mics, and you're not getting help, and you can't coordinate the fight, and you're just getting destroyed. I think that was a horrible mistake.
I would agree with you, though, to play devil's advocate. It did something, though. So at the time, World of Warcraft is starting to suffer in numbers.
Sure. Yep.
Wrath of the Lich King was the peak, right?
Yep.
We all know it. Even one expansion later, Cataclysm isn't holding the numbers. There's two major thoughts between players regarding raid entitlement. The first is that raiders, like yourself, and to myself to some extent, feel like that gear has to be earned, and that there's still plenty of content for everybody else, but raiding, there are some parts of the game that you need to experience to be able to get that gear. You wouldn't go out and do dungeons to get PvP gear, for example.
Right, exactly.
And raids are difficult, and they require that coordination, and it is hard work, so that's the reward for that hard work. Got it. The adverse of that, though, is, and to this point, World of Warcraft is still a subscription game, which it still blows my mind. They still have enough people paying subscriptions that they can sustain it without going free to play. So kudos to them. But whether you're some guy who spends 20 hours a day raiding 7 days a week and earns all the best gear, or whether you're Leroy Jenkins that comes in and he plays, some quest lines here and there and just wants what they call welfare epics at this point in the game.
Right.
You all pay the same $15 a month. So Casual Raider says, hey, if I pay this $15 a month, I am entitled to the same privileges as everyone else who pays that $15 a month. And to a point, they're correct. But, again, there is so much more out there. And the whole thing is this really becomes more and more younger players are getting into the game. It's much more casual friendly. There's definitely a difference in the way of thinking between someone who's in their 30s and 40s playing and someone who's in their teens and 20s. And so there's just really a divergence between who is entitled to what. So Raid Finder came in, solved that problem, caused many, 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 many more that I think than was worth it. But later in later expansions, they've tuned it a lot so that you can't complete raid quests if you're in Raid Finder. You can't get class set armor if you're in Raid Finder. You do get better than dungeon gear, but it's really not. You're still not going to get the best gear, and you're not going to get everything that you want out of raiding unless you're actually raiding. So give and take. I will say that Raid Finder is also a really great way to bring up new players into raiding to learn the roles. Questing and doing dungeons doesn't give you the full tanking experience, for example. Tanking a raid boss is very different in a raid.
Very different. And you do make a good point. It is a good way to bring up people who have never raided before, to give them a chance to dip their toe into the pool and kind of temperature and figure out what's going on. But I am of the opinion that the Raid Finder and making it so easy for casuals to get into it really caused more problems than solved problems.
Sure. I mean, guilds no longer were as necessary as they were.
Right.
It definitely caused a lot of strife between the player communities. Guilds simply didn't need to exist really if they weren't raid guilds. And yeah, I mean, I can log in the morning before I go to work, do a 15-minute part of a raid even. Not even a full raid. It's a part of a raid. Kill a couple bosses, get some loot, and leave. I don't got to talk to nobody. I don't have to interact with my friends. This is a massively multiplayer game.
Right.
So it really kind of encouraged solo type play and solo agendas for a lot of people. So there's that. There's that. I know that I'll be jumping into the Raid Finder in Battle for Azeroth just because of a necessity.
And you want to see the content, maybe?
Yeah, and I don't have the time to raid as a raider anymore. So unfortunately, I'm going to be the one that takes advantage of all those entitlements. Mists of Pandaria, September 25th, 2012. So, another problem that had come about for World of Warcraft was that World of Warcraft was a North America design. And by default, also European, but it was an English-speaking game. It was very structured around North American ideals for fantasy.
Even though it's huge in Korea.
And China.
Yeah.
More importantly, China. But yeah, Korea and even Japan, I mean, more people are playing in Asia than there are in North America.
Right, exactly.
So, Mists of Pandaria solves that problem by bringing in Pandaria, the long-lost Asian-esque continent where the pandas live. Pandas who were introduced in Warcraft 3 somewhere along the way, kind of as a joke. They become this peaceful, really eucalyptus eating kind of group that is just there and neutral and living in harmony. But with the Alliance and Horde that are now descending on Pandaria, there's also this negative energy that they bring with them that becomes the Shah, and it becomes this kind of generic evilness across the board that I really didn't ever identify with. But what they did do was Garrosh Hellscream. What was the old war chief's name? Holy crap!
Thrall.
Thank you. I need to quit now. I never
that
get to play WoW again.
That is my war chief.
Yeah. No. Hashtag not my war chief.
Hashtag not my war chief.
Thrall steps down. Garrosh Hellscream comes into play, but he is freaking unstable, and he's just like kill, murder everybody, and that causes the civil war within the Horde. That splits and basically it makes Garrosh becomes the final boss of that expansion, and all the ones that followed him, the murder bots. Apparently, players didn't have that choice because I would have followed Garrosh. I'm just saying. But pandas they get involved in the war against their will, but then they have to pick allegiance between Alliance or Horde, represented through the fact that I have a cat that's meowing now. Also represented by the fact that they can choose to be Alliance or Horde. You start at a panda at level 1 on Pandaria, but then through quests, you make a choice to be Alliance or Horde. So I thought that was interesting.
It's unique.
Yeah. They also introduce monks. So druids and paladins both can be tri-spec. They can be a healer, they can be a tank, they can be DPS. I'll question paladins being able to DPS till the end of my days, but...
Right.
Monks can do all three of those things as well, and they can do it with monkly style. I played a monk for a while. I got one to level 90, which is the new cap. It was actually a lot of fun being DPS and healer. Didn't necessarily like tank so much, but a lot of people do. But they're a really fun class to play, especially if you can get away with playing one not a Pandarian. I don't like the pandas. I never will.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about this, and this is definitely, I did not want this expansion, so I stayed away, is that they took a joke, like a little in-joke with having pandas in it way back when, and they made it a real thing, and they based a whole expansion around it. Everyone I knew that played called it Kung Fu Panda, because they said that's kind of how it felt.
Yep. With their obsession with food and everything. I mean, there's really so many parallels between Kung Fu Panda and Pandaria. It was crazy. Anyway.
Yeah, it didn't look like a fun expansion to me.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a little bit when I played through it. It surprised me in a few ways, not many worth noting, but anytime I'm leveling up a character now, I can't wait to get through it and past it.
Yeah.
It's done.
I remember that's how I got to the point where I felt about going through the Burning Crusade stuff, going from 60 to 70. It's like, oh, just get me through this. Can I get to the Northrend, please?
Yep. They also did another, less than the Raid Finder, but another boo-boo in regards to social structures and MMOs. They introduced cross-realm zoning. This is where they decided that, the maintenance to upkeep the servers wasn't really paying for its worth given, how spread out everyone was across. So they would merge 4 or 5 different servers together into one great big cross-realm zone. Problem is that you couldn't trade with anyone in your cross-realm zone. You couldn't be in a guild with anyone in your cross-realm zone. Originally, you couldn't even raid with anyone in your cross-realm zone, though they did fix that. And it took away the identity of each server. If you were from server X, you no longer were like, proud server X. You're now, server WXYZ. Not so cool now, are we?
Right. Yep.
And then the cross-realm zoning was like you would phase between, it was whichever server actually had the most people on it was kind of like in any given zone, that was what loaded up and you phased into it. Anything that actually happened across an imaginary zone line, because one of the benefits of World of Warcraft is there's no overland zoning, but they're really there. You just move through it without realizing it. Suddenly you realized it in a big way with cross-realm zoning, because as soon as you cross that imaginary line, everything would reload and change, and suddenly that pet that you wanted from pet battles that were introduced, yay, Pokemon! As soon as you had that pet you wanted to get and it was on the other side of the zone line, you cross the zone line, it doesn't exist anymore. So I think it really had a detriment to the game. It definitely had a detriment to the populace of the games. I mean, sure, more people could talk to each other, but it was chat. There was nothing meaningful you would do with these people, so... pet battles I kind of liked. I still do them every now and then. It's definitely a Pokemon. There's more every time a new expansion comes out.
Gotta catch them all.
If you're a Pokemon fan, it is well done in WoW. I will say that. But like Pokemon, it gets really tiring for me pretty quick. Gotcha. But I did like the quest lines that they had. They did have some really interesting quest lines to where you had to actually increase in level and battle new trainers. Completely original there. But some of the pets you could get from that were pretty cool. So you never did the pet battles, did you?
Nope. Didn't touch Mists of Pandaria or anything after it.
It'll be interesting to see what you do with that when you start playing for Battle for Azeroth. All right, so we're almost caught up here. Warlords of Draenor was the next one. Warlords was probably one of the more underspoken expansions. Like, it didn't have a lot of hype that the other expansions had, which is strange because it was leaps and bounds better than Mists of Pandaria by most metrics and definitely most opinions. One weird thing that it did is it actually took place before the main storyline. At the end of Mists of Pandaria, Garrosh goes back in time and actually prevents the tribes of orcs from joining the Legion.
Did he use a DeLorean?
He did use a DeLorean.
Nice.
But it went 100 instead of 88 because the new level cap was 100. So all these orcs instead become loyal to him. We see the events of the Dark Portal opening, except through the new revised timeline. They did do a graphic revamp of all the pre-Cataclysm races, which I actually liked. They look pretty freaking sharp now, so if you haven't seen them, you'll be surprised. Humans look more human-y.
Yeah, I was wondering about that with the graphics, because, I mean, I know they probably wouldn't update the engine much, but, I mean...
They actually have.
It's like, you figure they got to do something, right? Otherwise, it's going to look like it's a 12, 15-year-old game.
Well, that's what Cataclysm did for the game itself, at least in the old world, is they revamped the entire... It wasn't just new areas, that was their excuse to revamp the graphics of it as well. And so character models were still behind at that point, but as soon as Warlords of Draenor drops, character models start looking better, and it was noticeable. It's actually pretty good. We also see what you had just addressed with needing to level characters up. You can't wait to get past Burning Crusade. What they've done with Warlords of Draenor and every expansion since is when you buy the expansion, you get one free upgrade to the cap of the previous expansion. So Warlords of Draenor has a level 90 character boost. You could take any character class. You can use this token, it creates a character, or you can level up a character. So you've got a level 12 priest that's been sitting there forever. You can level him to 90, whatever it is. But they also take you to an area that kind of gives you a little bit of training in that character as well.
Cool.
So it gives you like the main abilities that you want to care about, how you're going to use them, and puts you in kind of a mock combat situation. Really well done, and it doesn't distract you from being able to jump into the game right away like it could have. So I thought that was good. And then one of my favorite mechanisms was introduced called the garrison system. So other MMOs typically would have some way of letting you increase your game in whatever way while you're offline. Even World of Warcraft was doing this at this point with Rested Experience.
Right.
But you didn't have anything that you could do kind of, push a button, forget about it, come back to it later. Garrison system did that. It basically gave you this empty plot of land, and then you got a couple followers, and you would send your followers on missions, which through the UI is really, you just select your follower, you push a button, they go off and do something. You don't see what it is. But then after so many hours, you come back to it, they've completed the mission. Hey, you've got some resources. You can use these resources to actually build a building of your choice in your garrison. So it became an extension of your character in a way that you customize this garrison to meet your needs. If you're, say, a skinner and leather worker, you may have the stable where you can actually get harvests of skins once a day, or a focus on getting better gear for your followers, or all kinds of different things that you could add to your garrison that were very personalized to you. And they didn't necessarily affect gameplay as much, so that you didn't have this compulsion or obligation to get any specific part of your garrison. Your garrison was really yours, and it was a really cool home-based mechanism. And then through all this, you're leveling your followers in like an idle game kind of way. They're getting more powerful. They're taking on rarer missions, maybe even a mission to go finish a dungeon, and you get an extra bonus. It was a lot of fun. I like the garrison system a lot. I'm glad that they put that in there because it did follow with Legion. But it was, again, it was kind of understated. I'm surprised that Warlords of Draenor was not more popular.
Really?
But, because, they definitely did a lot of things that Pandaria never did. So yeah, if you do play, you're going to get a character boost that you can thank Warlords of Draenor for. And you can kind of start at the end of the last expansion.
That's kind of cool.
I personally wish they would let you choose between 90, 100, and 110 at the launch of Battle for Azeroth, because, like you've never played Warlords of Draenor. That might be something that's interesting to you, but now you don't have any motivation to do that. So,
right.
But any thoughts? I know you didn't play Warlords of Draenor, but
no, I didn't really look at it much, because I remember when the trailer came out for it, I think I looked at it when I kind of went, because at the time I was very kind of turned off on WoW, and actually at that point I think I'd stopped playing MMOs altogether.
I think one of the problems that Warlords of Draenor had is that it didn't have any unique visual style to it. Like Wrath of the Lich King was all ice and blue and everything. Burning Crusade was all red and burning. Right. Even Pandaria had the Asian effects going on. Warlords of Draenor was just like vanilla WoW on Draenor.
Gotcha.
So, Legion. Legion launches August 30th, 2016. Immediately becomes my favorite expansion. The plot line of this basically is that the Tomb of Sargeras has been reopened, and the Burning Legion pours into Azeroth. So all those demons and orcs and everything that were just invading Outland before are now invading everything. They're worse than sand. They're everywhere.
Wow.
There's this continent in the middle that we all just kind of pretend was there the whole time, I guess. But basically, the players are looking for these relics of the Titans to start the Dark Titan. Now, if you're not familiar, Titans are World of Warcraft's version of gods. So Azeroth itself is a Titan, and there's a spirit that lives in Azeroth. It very lightly touched on throughout the lore, but it's really started to become something since Wrath of the Lich King. We start to see Titans being part of the game. Argus is the home of the Legion. That ultimately is where the storyline goes. So you actually go to the planet of Argus, where Argus is a Titan as well. And you go and you push back the Legion. This is where the classes, there was this unique focus on classes. Like instead of being Horde or Alliance, all the fighters kind of got together and all the demon hunters got together and all the mages got together, and they had these class order halls, which you built up much like the garrison system. Except they were a shared space, but in your instance of that shared space, you had all your little personal stuff in there anyway. So it was really great. They actually had these really, really involved class quests that were unique to every class, and they led to improvements in an artifact weapon I'll talk about in a moment, as well as unique class mounts for everybody, no longer just the realm of the Death Knights. Everybody gets their own special class mounts, and they're pretty cool, most of them anyway. We get level class increase to 110. We get the class campaigns, the unique mounts, daily quests. You remember daily quests?
Oh, yes. I remember daily quests. Gotta grind to get those frickin' gloves.
So you say that with such a negative connotation. Imagine playing through 3 more expansions of that. So they introduce world quests, which instead of daily quests, after a certain point in the campaign, you open up world quests, which are these points on the map, say like 10 or 12 per different zone, that show up at a day at different intervals. And you actually go out and find these world quests and do them. And you just show up in the spot, you do the quest, whatever it is, kill X number of things, kill this boss here, whatever it is. Then you immediately get your reward, and then you can go off to the next one. You can do world quests while you're doing regular quests. It was an improvement on the daily quest, but it was ultimately still just the daily quest. And if you wanted factions for anybody, then you had to go out and do all these world quests. It was definitely varied, which breaks up the monotony of daily quests. I still welcome world quests. But it's just kind of a new system. Daily quests are kind of a thing of the past, thank goodness. So if you play Battle for Azeroth, expect more world quests.
Okay.
The Piece de la Resistance, the best system ever in World of Warcraft, and competes for me with Alternate Advancement and EverQuest is the best character advancement system in any game ever. Artifact weapons. As soon as you start Legion, or really shortly after you start Legion, depending on your specialization. So note this, every class has 3 specializations except for Demon Hunters, who only have 2 because they start at like level 95. Every specialization has their own artifact. So if you have a warrior that has 3 different specs, you could have 3 different artifacts. And these artifacts are amazing. You have your own leveling system for the artifacts that you can pick and choose which artifact abilities you get. You can unlock different appearances for these artifacts. And again, I cannot overstate individual artifacts per talent. This gave people a reason to level up all 3 of their specs, or both of them for Demon Hunters. It was so unique. It was so, I don't even, what the word I'm looking for is. English escapes me. But
couch butt.
It was so couch butt. It was the best couch butt of all budding couches. And the fact that they had these unique quests that were tied to them, it really gave you the sense of individualization that you've never had in World of Warcraft. And these weapons, for the most part, for most classes, were amazing and unique. Some even had special abilities, like Warlocks had one where it was actually this floating skull that you held, and that floating skull maybe had a little bit of a diva attitude.
Really?
Yep. Mages, the mage arcane staff actually spoke to you in your mind and gave you hints about the game. They were brilliant. So sad to say, now that they've unlocked the pre-patch for Battle for Azeroth, all artifacts, they all had special abilities as well. All artifacts have all abilities unlocked, all stats unlocked. Their special abilities have been nullified, so they don't actually work anymore as you prep for the next expansion. You can still do the quests if you want, but really there's no point to it. But you still have like all the unlocks that you had for them and everything, because they do need to kind of clean the slate when you go into Battle for Azeroth. These artifact weapons were powerful. So to kind of go into the next expansion having them all still unlocked would just trivialize everything. But I really am I really loved artifact weapons. It's kind of bittersweet that they went away. I get why they're doing it. I don't decry them for doing it. Most people get it as well because we're having a similar system for Battle for Azeroth. But artifact weapons were just a reason to play in and of itself, and I loved it.
Doesn't that, like, though, for me, that's always kind of something where it's like, if this is unique and really exciting and it brings people, into a place where they're willing to level up their specs or their talent trees more, and then, like, the next patch comes out and you get it, you have to make it a more even playing field.
Well, it's not a patch. I mean, keep in mind, we had the artifact weapons for 2 years.
I guess that's true. But I mean, like, I couldn't go now, like, what would be the point, right? If I were to jump in.
I mean, just to have, I would honestly, I'm still thinking about leveling other characters just for the skins. These weapons are beautiful, man. You don't even know.
Okay.
But there is some salvation here. So Battle for Azeroth comes out, August 14th. Wow. Even quicker than I thought. So they're actually kind of doing a similar system. They're not going to be artifacts. They're not going to be potentially intelligent. They're not going to be as individualized, but they're doing some kind of artifact armor system so that you can actually improve your armor in ways much like you improved your artifacts. So instead of a weapon that's unique to you, everyone is, suspected to have their own unique sets of armor, and that will include some appearance stuff. And you get some of that. So yes, they wipe the slate clean. No, it doesn't go away completely, and you still have some of that individuality around it. But it also does allow them to focus more on the war. So the primary focus of this is reminding us that the Alliance and Horde are at war, and all hell is going to break loose.
I mean, it is a world of Warcraft.
It is. So let's tie back to Wrath of the Lich King for just a little moment.
You have my attention.
If you recall, we killed Arthas.
Yep.
Arthas is gone. Northrend is pretty much up for grabs, if you will. There's still legions of the dead. They didn't all disappear. Masses of them did, basically someone snapped his infinite gauntlet. Right. But there's still that whole aspect of the Lich King that's still kind of out there. Sylvanas, if you haven't, I know you watched some of the videos. They have some like specific focus videos on Jaina and Sylvanas so far. Did you watch Sylvanas's?
No, I didn't see that one.
Okay. Well, this is not so much a spoiler, and I have to mention it because this is what's going on. It's the end of this expansion. If you haven't been playing along, then you're not going to anyway. Sylvanas kills the World Tree at Draenor. Not Draenor, Dalaran. Like, completely just burns it down. I encourage you to go watch the videos at this. You can actually play through the pre-patch and it gets you to the video. Sylvanas has gone full evil. Like, Hellscream, just nothing. She is brutal. She is murder bot number one. She wants to kill everything. She doesn't want to win. She wants to destroy. So she's gone full evil.
She's willing to terminate a robot's life without considering its pleas for help.
She already killed it before there was even a question of turning it off. So we've got what's his name? Sarfang. Sarfang is one of her. So surprise, by the way, Sylvanas is the war chief.
Really?
Yeah, there's a series of events in there that. So through what was it? Warlords of Draenor, basically, the troll guy was the war chief for a little while. Oh, troll became the war chief in Mists of Pandaria. Then he actually dies, and Sylvanas takes over.
Hashtag not my war chief. Bring back Thrall.
If you like evil characters, there has never been. I will say Sylvanas is more evil than the Lich King.
Really?
And there's a lot of chatter about the potential that Sylvanas is going to become the new Lich King.
Ooh.
And I mean, she's really kind of playing into that hard. She's murdering elves with not just with reckless abandon, but enjoyment and glee. So she's the war chief coming into Battle for Azeroth. Sarfang actually contradicts an order that she gives him to kill off these specific elves, and So I suspect we're going to have another civil war. And I think this civil war is going to launch into Sylvanas being the new Lich King. A lot of people speculate that. I hate speculating, but this is almost kind of a no-brainer.
Gotcha.
So another important mechanic that we talked about a little bit before, allied races, they start at level 20. The incentive for people to use allied races and not boost them is that each allied race, if you level 1 from level 20 to level 110 without boosting, they actually unlock their own set of transmogrification armor. So if you're into that thing, great. If you're not, then go ahead and boost away. It's not cheap to boost. You do get one free at the expansion, but they're $60 after that. So take that. Ooh. Yeah. But it does give you one character, and the rest, you're just going to level up the way you're going to anyway. But with allied races, that actually gives you an incentive to actually level them up. We already talked about you'll be able to own everything except the last expansion as a subscriber. Right. So those two things combined, there should be plenty of low-level content to level through. If you want to live in dungeons, I'm pretty sure you can. We're also seeing a major shift in the continents again with the sacking of Dalaran. The Horde have taken over Dalaran. Basically, it's going to be that the Horde will own and level up through Kalimdor, and the Alliance will own and level up through the Eastern Kingdoms. And then once you get to 120, you'll start having some world quests and other incentives to go into the other side, hopefully PvP. If you're PvP, you do get a bonus to experience and loot. It's not required, but it does contribute to the war campaign. So they're trying to get people fighting again. They want people to remember what it's like to be Horde and Alliance. Brutal war coming up, but the Sylvanas thing is going to be this obvious twist. And it makes Horde the deliberate bad guys again. And honestly, that's where I want to be.
That's where it's supposed to be.
Exactly. There's all this ambiguity around, the Alliance has done some pretty questionable things. The Horde has worked together with the Alliance, and they're all buddy-buddy giving hugs. No, I'm going to... Also, with Battle for Azeroth, did you play an orc?
Yes, of course.
Orcs can stand upright now.
Really? Instead of hunched over?
As of the pre-patch, because they are now a race in their own right. They have risen up. They were predominantly the force that wins against the Legion. Orcs can now stand upright. And if you have an orc already, you could go to a barbershop and you can change the appearance option, and you could be an upright orc now, buddy.
I like that idea.
Yeah. So a lot of things I'm looking forward to. I know they're going to be talking about the armor stuff. They haven't presented all the details about that. We'll see that here in a freaking week, man. I want to be Horde, man. I want to represent Horde again.
Loktar Ogar. Yep. So Stu, what did you want to talk about this week?
Oh, so anyway, I was playing EverQuest, and I kind of wanted to talk about that again.
Nice. Well, I like this though, because this is a good kind of a good recap of all the expansions of World of Warcraft up to the current one that's getting ready to drop in literally like 8 days, like a little over a week from right now. When this releases, it'll be less than a week away.
Seriously, man. If you're gonna play, I'm going to roll a shaman probably wherever you are. Not that I need to because actually you can join with friends across any server now. But
I always find though that like I like to so I always played on Eastern time servers because I ended up there originally.
Yeah,
and I hated that because like they'd always like, hey, we want to do this at this time. I'm like, I'm still at work. So I want to find, if I jump in, I'm not saying I am, but if I jump in, I want to find a Mountain Time server.
You're only going to find Pacific or Eastern.
Pacific, that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah, get a Pacific and then it that way.
One thing I forgot to mention with Legion, and this is kind of important because it's still important now and how they're going to do it. With Legion, you didn't have to go through all the zones in order. All the mobs scaled to your level. So if you decided to pick one faction and one island of the Broken Isles, it didn't matter. You weren't over-leveled to the stuff. And then conversely, when you're level 110, you're not overpowered to everything. You're still getting a challenge from everything. That system is going to continue into Battle for Azeroth. And if you're level 110 and I'm level 120, the mobs are going to normalize to each of us. So it's like basically the ratio of damage to their health is the same regardless of your level. And so
Right.
we can group together in that situation and not have one that's holding the other one back or whatever. It's great.
Yeah, like back in the old day, like you had to cheat the system. You had to know, okay, I need to go to this zone because these are where they're going to be a couple levels higher, but I go with buddies. And as long as I got the first shot in, then they could just wipe them out and I got the experience. And so you do that. Like I'm like, oh, I want to get a hunter leveled up. So I'd go in there, boop, drop one arrow into them, and then they'd wipe them out and just boop, boop. And it was a fast way to like quickly level.
Yeah, now you don't even need to do that. You don't need to game the system. Now, they haven't done that with old world content, so you still kind of have to follow some zones around. But frankly, with as many players as are going to be playing now, with the allied races and the own everything stuff, I'm probably just going to level any new characters that I don't boost through dungeons.
Yeah,
I'll use the dungeon finder system for that just to get leveled up into it. But
yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, so through all this, the sense is really just to, what are you fighting for? What are you playing for? What's the environment of the game now? We know what it is now. So many more mechanics of the game that I didn't even talk about. PvP I just left completely alone, which is odd because that's kind of important now, but oh well. We'll live, maybe.
We'll make do.
But the game has grown so much. EverQuest has been around forever. It's the king of content. No one can contest that. Sorry, you can try, but there's more content in EverQuest than any other game, more raids than any other game. But it's all the same material over and over again. World of Warcraft has adapted. It's adapted to what it wants to be. It's changed what it wants to be. It's added new systems. I still think they're brilliant. Even if I'm not always playing it, I will always respect Blizzard for what they do with World of Warcraft. I'm ready for the new stuff.
Yeah, sounds like it. And you kind of got me pumped up here a little bit, Stu. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I'll be talking about it every week, whether you're playing or not. So, are you Horde or are you not?
Oh, I'm Horde since day one.
The Horde needs you.
The Horde's calling me back. Is that what you're saying?
The Horde needs you.
Well, here's my question that I want to ask, Stu, and I'll ask you, and then I'll answer, and then we'll ask our super friends.
Okay.
What is your favorite expansion? I'm taking it Legion because it sounds like that's become your new favorite expansion.
Artifacts blew me away, and not just artifacts, but everything they did around artifacts. The class quests, they gave you a sense of individuality that they had lost when they kind of homogenized everything before. It was great.
So for me, it's Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah.
It's that story. It's the tie back into Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne. It was a challenge. It was fun. For me, it really did feel like it was the last expansion before WoW started. I don't want to say dumbing down, not dumbing down, because that's not the right word, but
dumbing down.
Making it more easy for casual players.
No, dumbing down.
To do it all.
I think you would have really liked Legion because Legion had a brilliant story along with it. It was the continuation of Illidan's story, except it was very directly Illidan that you follow through all the way throughout this expansion. It had some of the same tiebacks that Wrath of the Lich King did. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people have left the game before Legion because Legion brought it back hard.
So that's mine. I'm Wrath of the Lich King. You're Legion. So, Super Friends, we want to hear from you. What is your favorite World of Warcraft? Let me try that again. Rewind. Super Friends, we want to hear from you. What is your favorite World of Warcraft expansion? And if you don't play World of Warcraft, what's your favorite expansion of any other game that you play? So if there's been a game and then they end up coming out with an expansion or a DLC, what has been your favorite addition to an original game that's kept you playing for a long time, kept you going, got that carrot on the end of that stick for you?
Yeah, and if it's not a World of Warcraft expansion, what was it about it? Were there like any new mechanics? That's the thing that I'm really curious about because that's what I love about what they've done here.
Right, yeah. What kept you playing? What was that carrot on the end of that stick? Let us know all the normal places. You can get us on the email, forwardofnerd@gmail.com, Facebook, which is facebook.com/forwardofnerd, Twitter, which is @forwardofnerd, or the phone number in a voicemail, which is 801-477-7687, and we will read your answers next week, or maybe just listen to them if we get a lot more voicemails. So,
don't disincentivize them.
I'm just saying it's an option. Stu, it's been a lot of fun. I'm glad you've talked me up. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm looking at specs on my computer and seeing what I need to do, if this is a possibility. But I was glad to do this and glad to have this chat tonight.
You bet, man. I'm glad to have presented it in such a format. And I know we kind of digressed a bit there, but it's amazing to see what they've done. And I'm kind of glad to get to be on a podium for a little bit and kind of hopefully everyone else who's listening is getting as pumped up as you are. Even if you don't play World of Warcraft, just the hype sometimes, the feel of that and hearing all that is awesome.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Well, super friends, from all of us here at the Fortress of Nerditude to all of you out there, wherever you may be, may the Force be with you.
Always. For the Horde!